Something new and ugly raises its head in Britain. In Notting Hill Gate, only a mile or two from London's West End, racial violence. An angry crowd of youths chases a Negro into a greengrocer's shop, while police reinforcements are called up to check the riot, one of many that have broken out here in a few days. The injured victim, a Jamaican, is taken to safety. But the police have not been able to reach all the trouble spots so promptly, and the quietest street may flare up at any moment. Most disturbing feature of the riots is the suspicion that not all the troublemakers are locals. Some of the gangs who break windows or throw bottles or burning torches have arrived by car. Opinions differ about Britain's racial problems, but the mentality which tries to solve them with coshes and broken railings has no place in the British way of life. This violence is evil, and the law and public opinion must stamp it out.
All right, welcome to the Saturday live stream. I'm just going to get right to it. My co-host, my homie, my dog, Pascal Robert.
What's going on, Jason? How are you?
I'm all right. And also our special guest, I shouldn't even say our special guest, he's just the Saturday show guy. Marcus from the Left Flank Vets. Can you hear us?
Yo, what's up? I'm trying to get my stream rated into yours, but I'm good. I'm excited to be here. You will see me hopefully in 1 to 2 minutes. While I get this technology, man. Technology it might be the worst thing in the world for me.
like an old man with a digital camera.
I'm old as hell. I am young but old as hell
when it comes to technology.
Yeah.
That clip was a clip that I played from some old footage from the UK when they had they had horrible racial riots in the late 50s when a lot of the West Indian community migrated to the United Kingdom, since they were all part of the crown, if you will. And that was, told them to be the motherland. I was actually looking for some footage from a man that is in the new Adam Curtis documentary, a man named Michael X, who I had never heard of. And Pascal, you had never heard of Michael X either before the documentary.
No, I had not. I was watching the first installment of that documentary, and I learned about him through his various, chicanery and machinations in the UK. Mm-hmm. He's definitely a figure that had escaped my radar.
Well, I think he's more gangster than he was righteous, and his existence seems to play into something that you talk about. Actually, kind of the whole crew talks about, right? Using Black people as like the vanguard of revolution,
right?
And everything about this man is literally, I wouldn't say made up, but the documentary says, that he comes to the States. His mom had told, I don't remember if the documentary says this, but I did find this out about him. His mom had told him because he's half white, to say that he was white. Like, just pretend you're white and it'll make life easier for you.
Wow.
When he goes to the UK, he becomes an enforcer for a landlord.
Right. I remember that part.
And so he was just kind of a hoodlum. And he meets Malcolm X when Malcolm X has a tour of the UK. And as the documentary says, people start calling him Malcolm X's brother, saying they look alike, which is funny. And so he goes by Michael X. Gotta earn these names in the nation. And he did not earn or was given anything. He just called himself Michael X and later called himself like Michael Abdul something else, and kind of becomes this figure for revolution in the area that he's in called Notting Hill, which is kind of an area that I compared to where I live here in Oakland, Brooklyn, a somewhat
working class.
But it's also kind of gentrifying with all these white students. And they're a part of this movement that are lifting him up to be this huge UK Malcolm X-like figure. And he goes to jail for a law that was passed to cut down on racial violence, when it comes to insinuating any sort of violence with language. And he actually got jailed for the law for about a year. And when he gets out, he gets very disillusioned with the movement because he doesn't see any changes, right?
Right. He starts to become suspicious, I think, of the his white cohort's dedication to the revolution.
And he feels that they were all lying, that it was just a phase almost, if you will. And the documentary says that he goes back to what he knows to regain any sort of black power, which is just black criminal activity. Now, I did find out this interesting thing about him, Pascal. There's like a movie about the dude and a big bank heist in the UK, and that's what he's like known for, being a hood, pimping. And this is after he gets out of jail. He is Michael X at this point, but he's known for pimping, and he starts a commune. I forget where the commune is that he starts, and a white chick finds out that his whole movement is all about him shipping pot to the U.S. And this is like 1972, where shipping pot is a big deal, and is about to go public with it. So they kill her and burn the compound down. He's found out and later put to death in his native Trinidad. I think that's where it happened, in his native Trinidad. So Michael X for me has been a fascinating figure because this new Adam Curtis documentary puts a lot on Michael X as being this part of this revolutionary vanguard. It's like Tupac's mom, Michael X, and Mao's wife, Jean Zhang.
Yeah, I got through the first episode, so I'm still early in the installments of the doc, but I can see where it's going down the line. I'm trying to make an assessment of, is it trying to make a larger statement about revolution overall?
Yes.
Or, is it a cynical take on what happens to revolutionaries, or, what exactly is the larger statement that it's trying to make?
Now, I watched, Marcus, did you watch Judas and the Black Messiah yet?
No, I haven't. So like impeachment came along, and it's like if I haven't been covering impeachment, I've been almost like sleeping. So, and also too is like I think we're planning to watch the
Adam Curtis.
The Adam Curtis thing.
Are you getting stoked to watch it now because of this conversation about this Negro?
Well, I wouldn't say that's the sole. That's not the sole reason. All right, I'll put it that way.
He's got me fascinated, man. I started asking everybody. I hit Pascal up right away. I was like, "You ever heard of Pascal?" Like, I never heard of him. Torre called. I was like, "Torre, man, you heard of this?" Torre was like, "I've never heard of him." I was like, "I bet your dad has." He goes, "I bet he has not."
Damn. Well, and so that's. I mean, like even like when because when you called me, I was like, "No, I don't even know." I asked him, like, is this dude still alive? Is he dead? Like, what is going on? And they're like, oh no, long dead. And like,
yeah,
which is like, all right, that'll, that gives you revolutionary bona fides if you end up getting, murdered by the state, like that
killing a white woman. Yeah,
that does give you some, but either way. No,
it'd be better if he did it for like some sort of revolutionary reason other than like she was finna bust out my pot operation, Jack.
Yeah, well, like that's what I'm saying. It's like, well, like Google search, it was just like, okay, hey, he did this, changed his name to Michael X here, convicted and then killed by at the Spanish Gallery. Like that's like the first little chunk, and it was just like.
But what?
Yeah.
In your opinion, Pascal, from watching the first episode, in your opinion, how did you feel about his opinion on revolution, kind of disillusioning revolutionaries?
I mean, I think that the ultimate problem I had with the Malcolm X character, right, is that he was trying to rationalize his own experience and project it on a larger revolutionary project. And I mean, I think that that's not uncommon, but at the same time, him becoming so circumspect about the way in which people were dedicated to his project, I think showed a little bit of narcissism on his part, man. It's like it's not all about him. It's all about, you know, the movement per se. And I think ultimately the guy was really not dedicated to the revolution at all. He was more dedicated to self-aggrandizement and, you know, things that kind of fulfill his own personal imagination of what he thought was important about him. But you know, I haven't fully gotten the full text of what Michael X was from the documentary. I'm still early on. There are 5 more episodes to go, so hopefully we get the chance to learn more about what this guy was.
Well, that's kind of like the whole goal, you know, just doing like just also the front page reading of like what the documentary is supposed to be. Mm-hmm. Like, isn't that kind of like the essence of what it is that, you know, following leaders that end up caring more about being the leader than leading, you know, that type of thing.
Some of it is that. Some of it, I think, is a lot of, and this is just my opinion, and I've seen 4 so far. There's a certain disillusionment, and I think we see it here on the internet left, right? In the podcast sphere, in the Twitter sphere of, I mean, these guys are doing it definitely on a much larger level. We're talking about like Mao's wife, who organized the color revolution in China. But a lot of the people that they cover and talk about understand that you have to forget the old world and the old world ways and the old world ways of doing things. And the Michael X character is interesting to me because it seemed like he really grappled with that. And when he got out of jail, nothing had changed. And if anything, the people that were supposed to be part of this movement didn't move. If anything, they did. You know, Pascal and I had a short conversation the other day. I don't even know if you remember, Pascal, about the petite bourgeoisie.
Right.
Why Marx, you know, didn't really trust the petite bourgeoisie and why they couldn't be part of your revolution. And ultimately, that's kind of who is always there for these movements. And it's just a phase for them. And I watched the Fred Hampton movie last night.
Which you finally got a chance to watch it.
I watched it. It took a while for me to figure out how to get it. You can't watch it through the Amazon.
No,
it's like HBO. Like, what is it?
Yeah, it's HBO Max. You have to have HBO Max.
I have HBO Max through Amazon though.
Yeah, it doesn't work. I tried. You got to go on the HBO Max app on the TV and then log in through there and see if that works. But you can't do it through Amazon. But I watched it, and it's literally The Departed with Fred Hampton instead of who ended up getting. Was it Jack Nicholson? Was the guy that ended up getting?
I mean, yeah, you got Jack Nicholson. You got fucking Matt Damon.
William O'Neill is Matt Damon, and Fred Hampton's character is Jack Nicholson, but of course not a criminal.
Is Ben Affleck in that one?
Jack Nicholson was an informant too in The Departed.
Was he? Yeah. Well, okay, so who were they ultimately taking down? I don't remember. They were taking down
the Jack Nicholson character. With the whole point was that they didn't know he was an informant.
Imagine that, but not take the informant aspect out, of course, because Fred Hampton was no informant. Well, yeah. That's so who Shaka King, the director, he did an interview on Democracy Now, and that's how he literally explained it. You know, he said
he was influenced by The Departed, literally.
That was how they were going to tell the Fred Hampton story.
Yeah.
Through the Departed, they were going to tell the Fred Hampton story through the lens of William O'Neill. I watched that movie, and the whole time I watched it, because again, I have a very, very small. I met Lakeith Stanfield real quick in passing. No one complained about him on set while they were filming Sorry to Bother You, and I told you that he got us new shower curtain and shower mat in a very disgusting bathroom. So I have nothing but nice things to say about the man. His acting chops are there. He he did what I was afraid he was going to do, which was bring so much humanity to a man that it's, to me, it's kind of hard to bring that level of humanity to. And apparently he had to go to therapy after this movie. And I totally understand why. Like, he is like what we would call woke. Like, he knows the Fred Hampton story. He didn't walk into this movie going, "Oh, I heard about this nigga in passing." Like, he knows Fred Hampton and he knows William O'Neill, and he didn't want to do it, but he wanted to be a part of the movie. And apparently there were scenes where he was like, "I can't do this," because it was like that hard for him to do these scenes. Because one thing the movie, and this is just my opinion, glosses over a little bit is the fact that William O'Neill got paid a few $100,000, and he didn't stop being an informant after Fred Hampton died. He kept doing it for like another few years.
Wow. And
as we found out with Taylor and Haas, Hampton's lawyers, who aren't even portrayed in the film, which I thought was interesting, he was a pallbearer at Fred Hampton's funeral. So the guy was a little more cold than the movie led us to believe. And I don't remember who we were talking to, but apparently the only reason why William O'Neill was around was because he had a car. And apparently
that was Cedric Johnson who was who was saying that he had interviewed, he had a guest at one of his classes who was a former Panther from the Chicago chapter, who he interrogated, like, well, what was this guy about? Like, how did he infiltrate? And they admitted that the only reason this guy was able to really play a role was because he was the only one who had a car. He had a car, he can get them around.
And apparently that was what the feds wanted to know. Like, they're like, what does Hampton need? And he was like, a car? And they give him a car.
A ride.
But it's it's a good movie, man. I don't know. Again, I watched it and felt kind of, I don't want to say dirty, but it's pretty violent. It's very, very violent. So if you thought, yes, it's very violent. They capture the violence of the Panthers a lot more than the humanitarian side, but they definitely show the breakfast. They definitely show the Rainbow Coalition. Some of the critiques that I had read and fears I had read beforehand, especially from people like the Black socialists in America that were saying things like, we're afraid this is going to kind of really reinforce the fear that Hoover had of a black messiah, and they paint Fred Hampton as the messiah, if you will, figure. Also keep in mind a 21-year-old man is being played by a 30-something-year-old man. That definitely adds to the way you look at him.
I'm worried about them decontextualizing this whole concentration on Panther violence without discussing the politics of the actual Panthers in terms of them being socialists, being black internationalists, anti-imperialists, and all of the other aspects of their politics. Do they even get into that?
It's glossed over, and I'll ask you guys both this question, or I'll present this to you, and I give you guys I want to hear your takes on this. If Fred Hampton in the movie is the socialist, collectively we can do things together, right? I am a revolutionary, repeat after me. That's Fred Hampton. William O'Neill is supposed to be the antithesis of that. He is a capitalist. He's an opportunist. The only reason why he becomes an informant, right, is because he gets caught trying to steal a car. And he gets scared and he snitches. So he's supposed to embody kind of everything that is wrong or with capitalism. He has like fancy clothes when he goes and meets with the FBI officer, and you kind of don't understand, like, where's this cat walking around Chicago with pimp clothes, like no one recognizes him. That's kind of how it was portrayed, but I don't know how you can get that across in a film, because I think that's kind of hard to get that across in a film. What do you guys think?
I think, honestly too, is like going back to that, like the Democracy Now! Interview with Shaka King, the director, is something that he said that now, like, thinking about it, is like something that's like kind of reminds me of like the Kamala Harris defense. The only way that you get a black woman in this position of power is if she is a prosecutor that, involves herself in the same actions that have, been detrimental to communities. And so with this movie, hey, it's basically, The Departed, except with black people.
The Departed, but black.
Yeah. And it's like, hey, and not saying it's like not good, right? I haven't seen it yet. You're saying hey, it's a good movie. But also too, it's like some of those things that Pascal was just mentioning is like, if they put that in, this movie doesn't get made. Or if they put that in, that ends up on the cutting room floor. Yeah. They can't, like, we can't have that conversation.
What do you think, Pascal? Do you think that's possible to really show who the Panthers were? I mean, there's a softness to the characters. There's a scene where the William O'Neill character, some Panther had just gotten killed, and the William O'Neill character comes up to Bobby Rush and Fred Hampton and says, "I got this C4, and let's go blow up the police station." And they get angry. They're like, "Why the hell would you blow up the police station?" And he's like, "This is revolution, man. We're gonna die for the revolution, right?" And he's like, "No, you're gonna get people killed. We don't do that." And he's really pushing the whole, let's go blow up this police station. I got this C4. And they're about to fight him over trying to blow up the police station. And he gets in his car and he drives away. And as he drives away, you see him take off a wire. Because the whole thing was he wanted to get them to admit that, they wanted to blow up this police station. So that to me was like about as close as it really got. And of course, speeches, definitely had a fair
question I'd like to ask is that, do you feel empathetic for the William O'Neill character after the movie?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a problem. If you're feeling more empathy for the snitch than the supposed protagonist, then there's a problem. Then the film is really about William O'Neill, which we knew already.
Yeah.
But the question becomes is that why is it necessary to have a film about the Black Panthers in context when we're censoring the actual snitch that had, one of their most successful leaders in the Chicago chapter assassinated?
Now, I knew who William O'Neill was because I didn't have to, but I watched Eyes on the Prize.
Not only Eyes on the Prize, but there's a great documentary by Gil Noble who does how the FBI, preyed on Black America or something like that. Basically, it's a whole long history. You can get it on YouTube on the FBI's role.
Is it older, from the 70s or?
It's from the 70s. It's from the 70s. And he has a long interview with William O'Neill. I think it's actually the same segment in which O'Neill is in the Eyes on the Prize. And
that was in 90. No, that's
later.
He does that interview in 89, I think. And the show airs in 90 around Martin Luther King's birthday on PBS. William O'Neill apparently watched the interview and killed himself after that.
Wow. Okay. Well, there is an episode of William O'Neill.
Marcus went, holy shit.
There's an episode of William O'Neill in the Gil Noble special on the FBI and Black America and Black movements, in which he interviews him and he talks about his role and how the FBI encountered him. But, the interactions that Gil Noble has with these informants does not have you sympathetic towards them at all. You kind of look at them as kind of low life figures. So I'm wondering, is it kind of counter-revolutionary, if you will, to use a term of art, to have a documentary about, like, why couldn't we just have a documentary about Fred Hampton and the Chicago Black Panther Party?
I will pose that. I will answer that with this question to Marcus from Left Flank, who actually has I almost said served time, but was actually in combat. I was on Ben Burgess' show recently, and we were talking about the movie Full Metal Jacket, which I'm assuming you've seen.
Yeah.
And a running through line in the conversation is everybody was saying it was an anti-war movie. And I had asked this question. I was like, well, that movie comes out right after Top Gun and after a slew of anti-war Vietnam movies that you have to get the state's permission to get made, right? To get all these props and things like that. And how anti-war are they when we really had no anti-war movie? Because also a few years after this movie, we have the Gulf War, which of course didn't have anywhere near the pushback, the anti-war pushback that you get during Vietnam. Now, of course, there wasn't a draft at this time, but do you see, if Pascal says, is this movie counter-revolutionary, then I have to ask the question, was a movie like Full Metal Jacket or Platoon to you an anti-war film?
No. And so like that's the thing is like you see in like Full Metal Jacket to the Marine Corps, like it's not a taboo movie, right? Mm-hmm. A real anti-war movie would be taboo for the military and the military members, like because that thing is like the jokes, the sayings and stuff like that in Full Metal Jacket, we like you people joke and say the same things. You know what I'm saying? Like that
golf ball through a water hose.
Exactly. That movie gives drill instructors material. That dude, the dude that played the drill instructor, he had just died not too long ago. Yeah. But like he was his whole career as like the military, like gunny, this gunny character, mm-hmm. You know, it was like a senior enlisted guy, you know, yeah. Oh, gunny, take care of you, right? Mm-hmm. Stern, tough gunny. But like you wouldn't get that if this was an anti-war movie. Someone wouldn't be able to create a personal image that they literally rode the next 4 decades on, you know?
Wow.
So no, that movie's not anti-war. However, so like, and this is why I would say that this movie might be very contra, you know? Because if you're not focusing on the politics of the Black Panthers, if you're not focusing on the, you know, like this is Jason, you've had this conversation, was like defending yourself is not revolutionary shit.
Yeah. Yeah.
As a community coming together and deciding that every child is going to get breakfast, regardless of where they come from in the United States, that is revolutionary shit, right? And so like if you're not focusing on that, you're not focusing on the politics of them being socialists or those being internationalists. If you're not focused, and then instead focusing on, oh, hey, look at that's violence, instead focusing on humanizing the person that was used for the state, like to directly weaponize themselves against the Panthers, then no, like, yeah, this is, and this is going to be a contra shit, right? And like, that's, you know, like the 30-something-year-old that's playing, 20-something Fred Hampton, also too come, like he's a famous ass dude, right? Like this is, so all these things like come into play to say like, yeah, this movie's meant to sell, right? Meant to go far as the price. And at the end of the day, make sure people know it's okay to be a snitch. And like, and I'm not talking about like, hey, if you see your next door neighbor mixing up homemade explosives in the basement, call the fucking FBI, please. All right. Like, I'm not like trying to play this game of like, don't ever, if you see someone going through a mental health crisis, don't call cops. Cops will never help you in that. But if you see some legit, like, oh, hey, this is gonna get people hurt, just like Fred Hampton, don't get people hurt. But on the whole other side of this thing, yeah, you've got them just saying, listen, hey, if you've got groups of individuals that are just trying to feed children in their community, oh well, hey, you're not a bad person if you work with the government.
I brought that up to a very smart panel of people, and I think because none of us I've seen combat, none of us have enlisted. I think all of us saw it from a different perspective. I think a lot of us saw the movie from the perspective of the narrator, right? Matthew Modine's character, and the graphic nature of the boot camp scene.
Yeah.
And
I mean, like, that's.
I think those movies are for a certain person.
A real anti-war movie would be something that, like, you would have to watch in, like, grade school, or not grade school, like elementary or like high school, like before you graduate. It's like, and possibly enlist in the military, or possibly go down a track in your life where you might be making these decisions. If you're an elected official, you got to watch this movie, and it's just nothing. And like, if you want to have an anti-US, like anti-war movie about the US imperialism, don't talk to Americans. Like, don't talk to us. Like that should have been a 2-hour movie about Vietnamese people and what they have to say and their experiences.
Mm-hmm.
Marcus is bringing the pain right now.
I can't with it,
I wish, what made me kind of sad, man? So it made me kind of sad because we're having this conversation about this movie, and it's jokey, it's fun, and I'm not saying anything bad about the guys I was on the show with, because I don't think anybody had a bad take per se. It's just interesting that when you think of these films outside of something that's so over the top propagandist like Top Gun, right?
I mean, honestly, like, both of those are propaganda pieces. Both of them, and just because,
oh wow,
there's more grit.
Good one right here. Look at that. Best war movie I ever saw was a documentary about the Bikini Atoll test and the Operation Crossroads. I've seen that, and that shit is frightening. I don't know if you guys know about that, when they were testing the radiation on the people in the Bikini Atoll Islands in the Pacific Islands.
Yeah.
It's just interesting because they all looked at Kubrick too, as Kubrick is a very anti-war guy. Right?
Yeah.
Like, I don't think Shaka King is a bad dude, but you're making a major Hollywood motion picture with a production company that literally just whitewashed the reputation of some horrible fascist Barbies in Fox News with Bombshell.
Yeah.
Bombshell,
and this
talk about what they talk about.
This is and like I kind of like go, like, I think solidifies like the point of, like, this movie doesn't get made on the scale or level that it does unless you do these things to make it fit Hollywood. And like, one of the things that's just Hollywood is establishment. That capital comes from somewhere, and it can be stopped.
And they want to see violence. And someone said, so I asked a question on Twitter and no one fucking responded to me. I said, who's seen this movie and what do you guys think? And one person responded, and the guy goes, take out the violence, it was all right.
Wow.
Because it was gruesome. It was definitely so.
What is that? What I'm trying to understand here, when you're saying that it was gruesome, besides the actual assassination of Hampton that transpires, right?
Yeah.
What exactly are they trying to say about the Black Panther Party that was violent?
They were ripping and routing cowboy style, black jackets, rigging it round, son, pow, pow. That's it.
I will say,
cowboys.
Whenever there's a fight or a shootout, they're not wearing the uniform. They're not wearing the black jackets. Because Fred Hampton, I don't think there's any footage of him wearing a black jacket. He always had like a brown heavy coat because he's from cold ass Chicago.
Yes.
So
Like
there,
that
in all fairness, when they're doing something, it's always in a defense posture. It's never, they're never antagonizing the violence, but it is kind of showing that there was a war between the police, the state, and the party. And again, how do you get this movie sold if you tell the story of Fred Hampton sitting around listening to Malcolm X speeches and reciting them and falling in love with a young lady and then going to jail? I mean, that's probably a little harder to sell than saying we're going to tell the story of the Black Panther Party through the lens of a man inside. He really was inside. He really fed children too. But he had a motive, and his motive was kind of like, I need to stay out of prison. Watching people literally go to prison for their beliefs, which I think is also interesting. And that maybe that's just me reading too much into it. But, you know, this guy is literally watching people all the time shoot cops, go to prison on trumped up charges because they believe in something greater. And in that Adam Curtis documentary, when he talks about Afeni Shakur being part of the Panther 21 and being the only member that defended herself in court, the reason why she got her case thrown out was when she confronted the informant, she didn't talk to him like an informant. She talked to him like a fellow comrade because they had been. And the first question she asked him is, and I thought this was so powerful, was, and it kind of maybe this is why I enjoyed Tupac. She goes, when we were doing what we did, what did you think we were doing? And the informant goes, I felt it was a beautiful thing we were doing in the community. That's powerful to get that man to say that on stand, to admit that. And she goes, did you misrepresent who we were to police? And the man says, yes, I did. She basically pulled out of him a level of honesty that no one else could. The informant, to the point where the judge goes, fine. And when that also, you know, she adds the fact that she goes, like, we weren't trying to blow any buildings up. That was you working with other informants. We didn't know where dynamite was. You got dynamite from another informant. We're over here trying to feed kids, and you're over here trying to blow up buildings. But that's not us. So that I thought that I felt like if you're gonna watch this movie, wash your mouth out with the Adam Curtis documentary that's out right now. If it makes you mad.
I mean, again, man, I think that we have to really put this all in the context of the fact that the apparatus of Hollywood and the nature of American filmmaking and the propagandistic nature of those entities in terms of how they service American empire is not going to, I don't really expect them to bide well for giving us an authentic depiction of a movement that was premised upon, you know, a kind of revolutionary cadre of Black folk trying to challenge American empire. You know, I mean, this was inherently a non-status quo movement, an organization of young Black people who tried to challenge the state and the function of the empire. And, you know, they were revolutionary, and the state was afraid of them, and the state was scared of them. And the state is not interested in having those kind of ideas promoted again in terms of creating a facility for which young cadre of Black and brown folk or multiple races of folk can think about challenging American empire and protecting themselves in a revolutionary way. And, you know, my larger point is that focusing on the informant, to me, inherently makes the whole project kind of questionable. Because, I mean, there's so much material to cover just in terms of the Panthers in and of themselves, that why exactly do we have to make the informant the center of the project?
Sexy story, different angle, It's a little easier to humanize. What do people want to see? I mean, there's that great episode of the Boondocks where they're all telling the story of Catcher Freeman. Remember that episode?
Yeah.
And everyone has a different retelling. And Riley, the bad one's retelling of Catcher Freeman has him being like this hyper violent, almost like mad animal, and that's the one that people want to hear. So Fred Hampton, again, he's not. They don't portray him as being any sort of like super violent guy. This was some of the guys that co-wrote it, the two twins, the Lucas brothers. They were like, this was the way that we could get this Fred Hampton story told through, and we want to tell it a different way through the lens of William O'Neill. And also, I think we have to add the fact that like Hollywood always wants an edge, right? How are we going to get an edge? And right now, you're going to be Michael X, right? Shaka King. You're the vanguard of the filmmaking revolution, and you're telling the story of the Panthers through the lens of William O'Neill. And it definitely makes you feel for the man because they do humanize him. And
I have a larger question about why this film gets made today, right? That we haven't really looked into. Mm-hmm. What exactly does this film mean in the context of the kind of post-George Floyd uptick in Black cultural production that we see, and all of the money that's thrown into producing TV shows and specials and all this other stuff that kind of, romanticizes every and all aspects of Black life through Netflix specials, Amazon Prime, commercials, TVs, et cetera, et cetera. Mm-hmm. And, is this a way of kind of neutralizing a truly revolutionary project in Black American history and just kind of reconciling it with American empire in another way, which is a theme that I've talked about before? Like, does this film reconcile this particular segment of the quote-unquote Black liberation struggle with the overall project of American exceptionalism? And that's a question that I would like to interrogate.
It's going to sell some T-shirts, man.
Well, I mean, when you reduce the whole Black Panther Party to like a bunch of T-shirts and slogans and like, cool sayings, what's isn't that in and of itself kind of counter-revolutionary and antagonistic to the whole project?
I think so. And I think it goes back to this Adam Curtis thing that we're going to watch Tuesday. By the way, quick plug. We'll be watching the Adam Curtis documentary, Can't Get You Out of My Head, Part 1, on the Left Flank Vets Twitch channel.
Twitch.tv/Left Flank Vets.
Oh, don't you worry, my chocolate friend. There you go. It goes to that whole thing. Like, at some point, are you so entrenched with the petite bourgeoisie as part of your movement, and these cats can't see beyond the old world, and they're like, well, this is just a new slogan, this is a new T-shirt, I can piss off my mom, this is great.
Yeah, I think the only way that helps though is, well, I'll say it helps in a way that it's like it's better than nothing. Not doing this whatsoever, not having any, even popularizing just I don't know. I think popularizing the violence in a way that's just like, hey, these people are evil, that'd be bad. Even if they did the like popularizing the violence is like, oh, hey, these are the Panthers, like in like the shoot 'em up cowboy type of thing of like that, like some of the shit would just be better than nothing. And you kind of just hope, right? Like I've got just more hope that young people or people that are just more, like that are going to pick this up and then start asking more questions, right? Like if this becomes the first breadcrumb, cool. If this becomes the whole meal, Yeah, that'd be bad. If people walk out of this and think, oh yeah, I know what this is about, and they never have to think about it again, like that would be the worst thing.
Well, let me ask you guys this question, and I asked this question to the chat as well. I remember being a young high schooler when Malcolm X was being written, and all of us went and got X hats and saved my lunch money and got an X bootleg hat from the bootleg man down the street in Richmond, California. And we all saw the movie. What did it end up doing at the end of the day? I guess what was the message of that film?
This is a great. I'm glad you mentioned that movie, because what was not in that movie, it had none of Malcolm X's Pan-Africanism, it had none of his internationalism, and it had none of his politics challenging capitalism. It basically focused on one of the more kind of traditional kind of reactionary periods of his life when he's still attached to the NOI. And it doesn't talk about how his politics transforms into becoming the international revolutionary Pan-Africanist force that he became. So, what function did that movie serve? That movie was about, Spike Lee's vision of Malcolm X that fulfills his particular political project, not the vision of Malcolm X that made him an international force for justice in the Black and brown world in the global South. I mean, Malcolm X was giving speeches about the importance of the Bandung Conference. I mean, he was talking about the Mau Mau in Africa. I mean, he was talking about how, Africans in America are stuck attaching themselves to an empire and should think about identifying themselves with the African continent. Those kinds of ideas were completely ignored in the film.
And do you think that was on purpose, or do you think it's one of those you can't tell?
I think it's a product of the fact that the what Spike Lee and his narrow nationalist politics identifies as Malcolm X's most important contribution is the stuff that validates his view of what comes out of the NOI up until today.
I mean, that's fair. I have issues with Spike Lee movies.
Yeah, no, and I want to like Keenan, what you're saying, like, hey,
that's my cousin.
Y'all watching? Oh, what's up?
Shout out.
All right. Well, it's good as Keenan's your cousin, because I'm about to dog. No. But I think those, like, I do think that there is a difference between young people today and like even myself and my generation and going on. The availability of information is just different than it ever has been. And so that's where, like, I actually do have a little bit of hope that if this does spark someone to ask, like, oh, hey, who was this person? Like, it's not, you don't got to go to the library and start opening drawers and flipping through shit to do research anymore. You don't have to do any of that. It's literally in the palm. Hold on. It's literally in the palm of your hand.
And so the availability of misinformation too. No, that's so true. That is true.
And so it's a lot easier, right? So now that we can if we just get the narrative out that, hey, this isn't the whole story, that's all you really need to do and then hopefully people can just go, like, we'll pick on, and go from there. It would be nice if they were just say, hey, if you actually want to just learn about who Fred Hampton was, here's a more just documentary style film that you should and could watch. Love y'all. Thanks.
I was thinking about when we're talking about Malcolm X, like there's been several films about Martin Luther King Jr. that I also think don't really capture him well. I don't know. Did you guys like Selma?
I felt that Selma was another kind of, desanitizing this whole notion that, like, the good movement was about no guns and the bad movement was the one about the guns. I was like, if you read books like, They Will Shoot Back, We Will Shoot Back, Martin Luther King had a gun. I mean, the Dream Defenders. Have you heard about the Dream Defenders? I mean, not the Dream Defenders. I mean, the what's the name of the Southern movement of brothers that were protecting the civil rights movement? The Deacons for the Defense. Excuse me, the deacons for defense. I confused them with the dream defenders. Oh my God, talk about a Freudian slip. Whoa. But the deacons for defense were armed brothers who were protecting the civil rights movement regularly. So I found it I found the messages of some in terms of they're trying to make it seem like, and I'm not a gun fetishist who's like, oh, we must, have guns to make the revolution legitimate. That's not my point. But the way in which, there is a particular narrative when it comes about the 60s. Good civil rights movement, bad civil rights movement. That everything before 1966 and the Black Panther Party was good, and everything from like Malcolm, including the Panthers, was bad because it got too radical, and the radicals messed up the movement, and so on and so forth. That narrative is very dangerous, and it's something that you'll find that even many Black people, in terms of their attempt to try to reconcile Black history with American exceptionalism, will try to push down your throat as well, is that it was the radicals that messed up the movement. And if we had just, been quiet and just kept marching, everything would have been all right. And we would have got our 40 acres and a mule, and it would have been all okay. Without challenging the fact that at the time in which the civil rights movement transpires and Black people are finally given some semblance of rights in this country, capitalism in America is contracting, and deindustrialization is a plague that haunts every city in the country anyway. And the chances of Black people being able to live an economically viable life from working class to poor folk would still have been problematic in the fact that the economy was contracting when all of this was going about. But yet still, we still have to blame the radicals for messing things up. And I think that it's really a myopic, ahistorical narrative. And I think that we should actually kind of think about how movies like this play into that narrative, and how movies like Selma help kind of create this kind of binary definition of good movement, bad movement, but within the 60s era.
Yeah, and that's, I guess it's like one other thing that's like, it'd be nice if they just portrayed Hampton as he was, but if I guess like that's where we can see the small gradual change, is that it's like no longer acceptable even for the elite class to craft their propaganda where forming of like the good and Black civil rights movement, it's no longer acceptable. They have to, try and fit it in another narrative, and even if it is just focusing on the informant instead of Hampton, that I don't know. Maybe that's just another way of saying, hey, we can't straight up demonize this one section of the civil rights movement, the Black revolutionaries, whatever. We can't demonize them in the same way, so here in the year 2021, we do it this way, right?
Well, what's fascinating, right? Jason and I, we talked about this a little bit on our last episode, and this is a theme that I kind of bring up, is that how elements of Black power politics from 1972 are recycled, right? The radical challenge into American capitalism and imperialism never get recycled, but we get things recycled like Black capitalism, which is something that is the New Yorker had a whole article sometime within the last week talking about Soul City and what would have happened if it could have been allowed to be a nice, wonderful bastion of Black capitalism. So again,
Can you get into a little bit about Soul City though? Could it kind of give some context there so people know what you're talking about?
Soul City was an urban development project that was supported by the Nixon administration, that basically was about creating a metropolis, I believe it was in North Carolina, of Black capitalist development and small business development and roads and all this kind of stuff to give Black people. It was ultimately a means for which to get Nixon to get members of the Black middle class to sign on to his project of capitalism and blackface in order to neutralize the support of the radicals like the Black Panther Party. So he tried to basically kind of politically bribe Black folk with things like Soul City, which would have created a municipality in a certain city in the South in which Black people would have their own kind of economic and municipal development and thrive on their own, et cetera, so on and so forth. So it's basically Nixon telling you, like, yeah, let's create a kind of progressive form of Jim Crow to have these Negroes be able to fester on their own, so we don't have to dedicate any government largesse to having their development at all. So, it's kind of a reactionary kind of conservative play on Black pride, what allows Black people to get minimal government kind of assistance compared to what was given to larger societies, particularly of white folk, via the New Deal, and expect them to be able to kind of, marshal their own resources on their own.
And I got even one or two of like, and maybe this is a question that I want. Do you think we'll ever get a big blockbuster on the Haitian Revolution?
My question is always, should we want that? Should we actually trust?
Hold on 1 second. Pascal, hold on 1 second. I found a clip of James Earl Jones on Dick Cavett in, I think, 68 or in the early 70s. Anthony Quinn, apparently, and I didn't know this. Maybe you know this, being
I know the segment you're going to show.
You know what I'm talking about? Anthony Quinn was going to play the Emperor of Haiti.
Yeah, Henry Christophe, yeah.
And they're asking, and Dick Cavett is asking James Earl Jones if he's offended that Anthony Quinn, and if you guys don't know it, the actor Anthony Quinn is not Haitian.
Not Black either.
He's not at all. Is going to play this role, and I believe a Black woman wrote an op-ed in the New York Times about her disdain for that move, and Dick Cavett is asking James Earl Jones like how he feels about it, and James Earl Jones is trying to give like the nicest answer, but Dick Cavett won't stop. Like he just keeps like poking him. But yeah, go ahead and answer your question. I'm going to go find this clip. Keep talking.
Oh, I'm about to say, I thought you had it ready, queued up. I was like,
I'm not that quick.
Yeah.
Also, we're going to be joined probably in a few minutes by our good friend Conan Neutron is going to drop some knowledge about how to stop the post office from going under, because there's a lot of talk about a move to, of course, was it privatize the postal service?
Man, Joe Biden.
I know, right?
I thought everything was fixed. I thought we were supposed to be at brunch. The fuck?
Marcus said, I thought we were supposed to be at brunch. Joe Biden is president.
Where's he at? What's going on? Kamala, do something. No, of course. And this is kind of like the thing too, is that like if people were paying attention to what was going on with the Postal Service under Trump, like they should have just known to stay on Biden's ass about it. Because even that the Postmaster General, DeJoy, that's one of the positions that doesn't get to, that the president just doesn't get to fucking pick and choose, right? And so that's something that like you could say, hey, it's not on Biden totally that some things are happening in the Postal Service. But if it's not in our collective focal point, then then the Biden administration is going to understand that, oh, hey, well, if people don't really care, then we don't really have to do anything, because they're getting the same moneyed interest in there. You say, yeah, we don't, privatize this. UPS can handle that. Let Amazon take over this portion. And it's just a scam. It's just a scam.
Yeah. He hit me up about it. I didn't really know much about it. And then I thought everybody flaked on me this morning because I woke up very early and I didn't get any messages from anyone. I was like, oh my God, everybody flaked on me.
Am I supposed to do like, hey, I'm good in the morning? Hey, I'm up.
I get paranoid, man. I'm just,
because like that's like, you're like, oh, you're streaming now. What's up? I'm like, yeah, son. Like, I'm gonna be raiding you at noon.
I didn't know. I got an alert that said Left Flank Vets was doing the impeachment coverage. I was like, this motherfucker again ruins all my good black shit.
No.
Every time.
No. I said, hey, y'all, we're done with impeachment for the day. It's time to go talk about important shit.
Basically.
Here we are.
Have you been doing like an impeachment stream for the last few days?
Yeah. So basically, the whole impeachment, it's on, and then I'm just watching it and talking about all the nonsense, and thankfully people like, and that's where too it's like there are people who are watching that wouldn't watch, and people who are engaging who wouldn't engage, because you got me talking shit about Jamie Raskin's bald spot. You make it fun. But
someone says it was A+ coverage. I believe that wholeheartedly. I've definitely done the debate coverage with you guys, so I know how it can get with y'all. But I want to show you guys this clip real quick, and I want to get the feedback from you guys, and of course the chat, where James Earl Jones addresses Anthony Quinn's race controversy over wanting to play the Emperor of Haiti.
Let me go back a bit. Anthony Quinn appeared on this show some time back, last time he was on. He said that he was going to play, do you say Henri Christophe or Henry Christophe, the Haitian emperor, late Haitian emperor, and he said he was going to make a movie about it. And that he was looking forward to that, and so on. And Christophe being a black man. And then we talked about something else, and he left. And then this very angry letter appeared in the New York Times by Ellen Holly, yes, actress, saying, and the headline, well, she's not responsible for it, but the headline writer something like, "Blacks don't need Tony Quinn," or something like that. And the letter was beseeching him not to do this, and saying it was a terrible idea for him to play a black man on the screen because black people should play it, and it would take away from black pride and all of that if a white man were to play a black man. And I think this is nonsense, but I wondered if you do.
Well, I think a lot of what comes out of such a controversy is nonsense. The controversy itself, though, you have to pay some attention to why it happens. Just my own personal view of that, whether Tony Quinn should play a black man. In this case, the black man was real, was of history, and I think I can't condemn Tony Quinn for playing that. Only Tony Quinn can condemn himself if he does not achieve several things, which include he has to evoke, project a black man in appearance and behavior and so on. To the extent that we are different from white people, he has to, as an actor, achieve that. But he also has to achieve the essence of a Haitian, and add on to that all the other problems of achieving an emperor with that kind of great ambition. And if Tony Quinn fails at any of these things, he has condemned himself. But that's an actor problem, and not a cultural one,
Yeah, but since you're not willing to say that maybe he can't succeed at all those three things, then you wouldn't say that it's wrong for him to play the part.
I don't know his acting talent that well. I admire many of the things I've seen him in, most of the things I've seen him in, including Viva Zapata, I don't know how you pronounce that. But all I can say is he's made one implication, which I don't agree with, and that is that the black actors that are available to play that part have failed to do so because they feel that they're not qualified. That is an implication that I've heard and that I've read in a letter he wrote to a friend.
God damn.
And I
couldn't find a dignified Negro to play the role.
That conclusion, I think that's the conclusion that he has that makes him feel more comfortable in the controversy. The reason that I or many of the other actors have not approached it is because we have not yet received a script that does the man's life justice in very simple terms, in historical, cultural, and dramatic terms. I have not yet read that script myself, and I have a feeling that Mr. Quinn, in noticing our rejection of certain scripts, one of which I know about in particular, that he has drawn the conclusion that we don't feel that we can tackle it, but it's just that we don't feel that we can tackle that character through what has been written so far.
But if he could
so the script sucks.
Be black, Haitian, and imperial, then you wouldn't mind if he played it.
Many other things I wouldn't mind at all. I think it's an actor's right to tackle anything. I would like to have a crack at Ludwig van Beethoven. I'm quite serious because there's a rumor anyway that he had black blood in him, you see. But in order for me to tackle Ludwig von, I would have to get a little straighter hairstyle than I have and a little lighter skin complexion than I have, you know?
Yeah.
Among other things.
But I thought her letter was silly because, well, silly, she was not,
No,
it wasn't silly, but she was obviously deeply felt, but I just think she's wrong. I mean, you have to judge artistic things by artistic standards, and I don't think you should make political judgments about works of art, and they shouldn't forward causes. Bertolt Brecht would disagree, but he can't.
Well, you see,
sorry, Brecht fans.
There's no silliness in that, but if you notice one thing, if Tony or you or anybody else who doesn't understand it had read the New York Times several months back, Ellen herself has written a play, which even I have not had the privilege of reading, about Christoph, and pointed out the problems that a black writer and a black producer has of getting things on, and she feels that, and I think rightly so, that she's being muscled out, you know.
Oh, well, that's
See,
matter.
the man's life is Christoph's life is public domain, of course, but once a large production moves in and takes the edge off, then it's difficult for any smaller production and less expensive production to come in and do it afterwards. I intend to do it eventually, but I'm in no hurry. I don't want to compete with Tony, you know.
Yeah.
But someday I will do my own version of that
So
man's
she might have
life.
had another motive for saying this as well as...
I don't think that implies another motive, but it implies it is directly into the problem, you know.
Yeah.
So what did you guys think? First of all, let's introduce our fourth member of the chat. Fellow musician, sometimes I'm in his band. Conan Neutron of Conan Neutron and the Secret Friends. He's a little more dressed up for the occasion.
That jacket's dope.
I figured last time I came in, I kind of looked like some combination of a sack of trash or a dude ranting in his car about, the government impugning on his freedom. So I figured I'd zazz it up a little bit this time.
So I don't know if you saw that whole clip, Conan, but that was Dick Cavett telling James Earl Jones, I don't know why you Negroes are mad that a white man is playing.
What a prick.
But it does. It reminded me of a conversation I had with Dan Larson of Toy Galaxy, Dan Larson, about forced diversity. And he used to get mad when comics, I think, are we all comic book readers at some point in our lives?
I was once at one time.
Okay. Forced divert, they changed the Human Torch for the Fantastic Four movie. At one point, it was Michael B. Jordan, and the Kingpin in the Daredevil movie was a black man. And Dan Larson, to his point, was kind of like, if you're staying true to the character, I don't really mind it. And I'm not tripping too hard off forced diversity, which definitely Marvel made a big push to add diverse characters into their canon.
Absolutely.
But that is actually true to the comic book, though.
Yeah, and it's different when you're having a historical figure. Dick Cavett is to me defending like Elizabeth Taylor playing Cleopatra.
Yeah, so if I may for this, and again, as sometime in my life reading comics, I'll say like last night. You know what I mean? Like this is a real time thing. The being able to like read them on a tablet rather than boxes of them around the country and stuff like that is that kind of reignited my love for it, and not just like the big stuff, but indie comics, etc. I will say the only time I have a problem with it is when they fundamentally change the character. So let's look at those recent Spider-Man movies, and I like them. I like those, but they have the Mary Jane Watson character is cool. It's a great character. Pretty much nothing like Mary Jane Watson. And then they have like the kid who's playing Ned Leeds, who's basically Genki from the Miles Morales Spider-Man. He's exactly that character, but they call him Ned Leeds. So I'm like, why don't you just call him this other dude? Like I when they're reimagining the character, and creative license, right? Okay, that's fine. But when they change it so much that it's like doesn't really bear that much to the beginning, that kind of bums me out a little bit. But it's not because it's like, oh, there's a minority playing that character, I don't like it now. Not in that aspect. It's just that like I think that you have to stay true to the character. Now, you mentioned that Daredevil movie. I think I had like post-trauma stress disorder gotten that out of my whole
Michael
memory.
Clark Duncan is the kingpin.
Yeah,
And-
exactly. Yeah.
And Dan Larson actually brings up the fact that the kingpin historically has been this very large white man, and here you
Large
have
white dude.
Here you have a
D'Onofrio
large
was perfect in that in the Daredevil series, and I think it's important that he be, the
Also, I do want to say like kingpins, like bowling pins are mostly white. So
straight up, yeah. Well, I think it's important that he be a white guy. You know what I mean? Because it's like part of like how he does his thing is white privilege, even, and also playing with the expectations of like he's a corpulent dude, man. He's like, that's a big man. That is a big man. People are like, oh, that guy, like he's a pushover, fatty. I'll just knock him over. And then it turns out like, oh no, he's jacked, and like he uses that to kind of.
Well, how do you feel about, and we're going to get into the post office thing real quick, and I want to know how you guys
didn't expect to be talking about this, yeah.
Yeah, how do you guys feel about, so Monica Rambeau, who, if you guys have been watching WandaVision, we won't stay on this nerd rant for long. Monica Rambeau, if you've been watching WandaVision, is Captain Marvel. Throughout the early 80s, she is part of the Avengers. She is Captain Marvel. She's a black woman. And one day, she's not. She's Spectrum, or Photon. Whatever.
That was another one, yeah,
and all that other stuff. And they change her hair and they straighten it and lighten her up. She had a natural early on, and she was badass.
Yeah, and she had a funky outfit too, man. Some of those outfits were like, I was like, man, I don't know if they're gonna put that on the screen. But then they pulled it off recently by doing like, hey y'all, it's Halloween, and then they have the classic over and the classic, and I was like, okay, that's a cool way to do it, because some of that stuff.
But how do you feel about that? Like Monica Rambeau being Captain Marvel, that was her name for a while, wasn't it? Almost totally years. Captain Marvel, and then she just nope, we're gonna make it a blonde woman again.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
not even again. We're gonna make it a blonde woman.
Yeah,
be a man.
I am totally fine with that character in all its incarnations. I think Monica Rambeau has largely been done dirty within the Marvel universe, not just in the movies like so far, because there isn't that much of the movie track to really go for. I like the Carol Danvers character quite a bit. What I do like is some of the better writers in recent years have kind of played into the Monica Rambeau being like, well, hey, I led the Avengers, like, come on, what the hell? But like the fact that she should be a little bit indignant that like she's considered this like B or C list hero, and she's like done all this stuff, like, save the universe, this and that, and people still don't even know. They're like, oh, what Photon, what Spectrum, what was your name again? And I think that's smart writing, because that's just like 70s were just lazy. They're like, all right, it's this one now. All right, it's this one. Like the fact that like this happened recently, but like, okay, Ghost Rider's like, teenage kid with a car now. It's not a motorcycle anymore. Like,
yeah.
Okay. It's comic.
Ghost Rider a car. He's not on a motorcycle anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he's a Latino kid from East LA, if I remember right. And it's cool. Like at first I was like, what? But then I was like, you know what? Stunt motorcycle drivers. There's not that much of it now. 70s, it was like Evel Knievel. They're lousy with those, people jumping over canyons and stuff like that.
And not making it.
Yeah.
But
and,
yeah.
I was just going to say that Jairus in the chat box said the Monica is also the leader of one of the greatest Marvel super teams, Next Wave Agents of Hate, which I love. I love Agents of Hate. It's so good. It's so funny because it's like a send up of a lot of stuff, and it's very clever. It's very funny.
If I knew how to get away with playing clips, like I see these bigger channels that play Marvel clips, and I know how a lot of it has to do with like not playing the music, I would definitely play some of these clips or even have screenshots of some of this stuff so you guys could see the transformation of Captain Marvel, because it is really interesting to see this black woman who actually at one point Captain America says, we want you to lead the Avengers. And then she just stops being Captain Marvel.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden becomes something else. But you didn't come here to talk about comic books, which is
no. Although I'll do it gladly all the time, always, for sure.
You came here to talk about the post office because you hit me up and said, Jason, the post office, like the doctor in Back to the Future. There's a problem on it.
Doc Brown, yeah. Don't get me wrong, man. I'll hold my own and then some with this nerd stuff any day, all day. But this is a little bit more important for sure.
Mm-hmm.
So, should I just launch into it? Did you want to
You know who Marcus and Pascal. Are you guys familiar with the post office? I mean, I know you know.
We've used it in our lives.
Yeah. One time I utilized a PO box in order to get my mail. It's firm, very, very deep connection. No, actually, I'm excited.
You heard this thing, Paul? Post office? You heard of it?
I meant to say, are you guys Conan talk? God damn it!
I know more about the post office than any of the comic book shit that you always talk about. So I'm excited to be able to engage in this.
Okay, so
hey Jason, I gotta jump off real quick and come right back. I'll be right back. Let me just block my.
So where I'm at and what I wanted to speak to about this is that for me, a big part of my life is, I run my band, since we run my record label, send a lot of stuff, CD, records, T-shirts, and whatever to and fro. I deal with the post office a lot. I actually think that the U.S. Postal Service is one of the great American success stories. One of the things that just kind of works. Nobody has to. Yeah. It is not controversial. Yeah. There's usually not anyone against it. It just kind of does its thing. However, a lot of people are aware of the Postmaster General that was appointed by Trump, DeJoy, and that guy sucks. He's terrible. Oh, wow. And there was a direct attack against the Postal Service to ostensibly make it more difficult to use because of vote by mail, ostensibly for vote by mail. But of course, you're not just affecting vote by mail, you're affecting everything. So there was a systemic undermining and sabotage coming from within. The calls are coming from inside the house, that kind of situation. And that is still, somewhat on the upswing, but still happening. We're still dealing with ramifications and effects of that. Meanwhile, we have skyrocketing postage. International postage is just for the people that don't send stuff all the time, that don't own an Etsy store or run a record label or whatever. It's almost tripled, quadrupled in some cases. And then it's become more expensive and less reliable. So there's now lost packages, there's lost letters, all kinds of things are getting lost. And that's something that the U.S. Postal Service was always very reliable. What's rain nor snow nor sleet of night. I think that's the saying. And what I'm driving at with all this is that's planned. That was a planned thing specifically about vote by mail, a total short-term goal, and wrecking an institution to take care of a short-term goal. Here's something a lot of people don't know. The U.S. Postal Service isn't a direct part of the executive branch of the government. It's actually an independent agency with ties to the executive branch. So there's a board of governors. There's a board of governors that has 9 slots. Now, 4 of those are empty right now. 5 of those are Trump appointees. So if you want to get rid of the Postmaster General, who has an appointed term that lasts a certain amount of time, much like a FBI director or other pseudo-independent agency, you need the board of governors to take care of that decision. And there's plenty of cause to do that just by nature of what happened in the November election. But that's really all I see in the conversation. When I talk to other people that are in bands or do record labels, they're all like, oh, it's dismal, it's terrible. Everybody is kind of aware of it if you use the Postal Service on a regular basis. Personally, I've lost hundreds of dollars having to, send things out again, more hundreds of dollars just with rising postage costs, et cetera, et cetera. Now, if you take that for bigger bands, bigger labels, et cetera, if they're experiencing that, it's, by a factor of 1,000. And I think it's there's so much going on that's kind of an untold story right now. So it just kind of flies as a C or D list block story if you're producing a news show or something along those lines. That, again, as I mentioned, the USPS is one of the few unabashed American success stories, right? And a lot of people don't even realize this is happening. A lot of people don't realize that the president can't fire the Postmaster General directly. And in order to do so, would need to dismiss at least one, if not all of these, blatant Trump appointees that said hey, we don't have any interest in doing that. Here's the conceit of what I'm trying to throw at this. And this is just part one of it, but Postmaster General's got to go, which means that the Board of Governors got to go. That breaks norms. That's not normally done. But what also is not normally done is the post office being used for political affect. So I'm fine with the argument being specifically about the whole vote by mail thing, that's why we're doing it. It affects so much more, though, and I think that's a stronger argument. Because I think that you probably won't see those same problems if you're like an Amazon or something along those lines. But if you're sitting over here with your stamps.com account, printing out postage and like wondering when the ink's going to run out on your printer, those are the folks that are going to be most affected. And because of that, I think it's very important that we contact representatives and senators to bring awareness to this issue. And last thing on this, before I kind of yield the floor to questions and other folks get a word in edgewise, is that I'm represented by Gwen Moore in Milwaukee, who's a really good, really awesome lady. She's really on it, generally agrees with me on like every issue that I want, right? And she sent me a very thoughtful, very cool response. And it was largely dedicated towards things that I didn't address, which is to say, dismiss the Board of Governors, dismiss the Postmaster General, and appoint a new one. And part of that, I think, is because, whatever, there's certain keywords that people get when they get a letter, and then they put out the form letter. Who knows? But there's
That's
this
exactly it.
Yeah, but there's this nuanced thing that people, I think that my representative knows more than me on this, very nuanced issue. That isn't true. So that's why it's important that people actually take action. I was trying to pump up, if you folks are familiar with ResistBot, you text 50409 resist on your phone, and it'll find your representative, and you can actually draft a letter on your phone to send to them about anything, not just this, but anything. It's a great service. So I was sort of trying to use that. But ultimately, I would like this to be something that's not just myself and like 5 of my friends, shouting at the sky, yelling at the cloud. I'd like to see some action on it, because if there's going to be some action, it's gonna have to be very soon. Because otherwise, what's going to happen is Biden's going to appoint 4 fine, Biden-style moderate appointees, and then there'll still be these 5 Board of Governors folks appointed by Trump. And DeJoy is going to continue to, he'll get to make his mea culpa. Oh, I'm sorry that I did that, and continue to screw up the U.S. Postal Service, which has been his stated goal. Like, this guy has said from the outset that he does not believe in the U.S. Postal Service. So, of course, he's the perfect guy to run it.
Isn't that kind of what Richard Wolff talks about when he talks about some of the greater accomplishments that we've had, even with things like public transportation, and then you think about the post office? If I destroy it from the inside, then the average person will be like, fuck that. Like trying to have a conversation with my daughter's boyfriend about the importance of unions. He works at Amazon, and he goes, I don't even understand why I would even want a union, because they've got into they're paying millions of dollars to get anti-union rhetoric into their system. And I feel the same way about what you're talking about with the post office. I mean, you have a guy in there that his main goal when he got elected was to destroy the post office. So getting rid of that guy,
you would think that would be an obvious thing, right? And he's even said recently that he wants to stay on in his role. Well, tough.
Yeah. And so part of the thing too is you're in on a lot of very important things, why I love even just being able to comment on stuff. So I used to be the guy that would have taken your email and said, oh, hey, what is this person about? What do they want? Oh, post office. Well, we've got this post office letter. Make sure you change the name, put in the address. Okay. All right. See ya.
And scene.
Well, exactly. And scene, right? And so you do what you and what I would advise you and anyone else to do is honestly just come back. Hey, I sent you this, you sent me that. What you avoided was these highlighted parts that, so please will you address that? And they should, but that, that's a very ongoing thing. I would like to say too, is greatest thing you said, they don't know what the hell they're talking about. Yeah. They are in charge of the whole thing, right? Everything that you look around and touch and interact with, people in Congress affect that. And so there's no way for everyone to be masters of everything. So largely when you start getting into these issues and stuff like that, yes, you might likely know more than they do. And you're going to be educating them on what they need to do as your representative, right? Not, oh, hey, listen to this person who represents me. Another good thing with like the post office, it's literally within the Constitution. So if you're talking to conservatives and they're government spending, blah 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 blah. Hey, if you say we need a military, our founders, right? Blah blah blah. Constitution, Article 1, Section 8.
I like the way Marcus had a Constitution in his hand, ready to fly.
Yeah, I was gonna say he was right. He was on it, man. He was like, boom.
I keep my pocket Constitution. Honestly, everywhere I go, because like there's too many people that just tried bullshit, and say that that's the thing is like it's just words, you know what I'm saying? It's just words, and how you use them, that's where the importance is. But like, yeah, when people talk about, oh, who cares about the post office? We got UPS, we got Amazon or FedEx, whatever the hell. Tell them no. Tell them if you want to be a good, true patriotic American.
That shit is way more expensive too. Amazon, UPS. I think the max UPS will insure you for is like $100. This shit, and it's way more expensive.
And they don't even deliver everywhere. That's one of the great things about the U.S. Postal Service is you can be assured you will be able to send and receive mail wherever you live. You could be like in the boondocks. You could be like a Native American living on a res, and you know for a fact that you will be able to get and receive your mail. That is not something that UPS or FedEx either says. Now they'll be like, hey, we deliver, we'll get it there. But like, they don't talk about the fact that like, yeah, in some cases they'll deliver it to you, for a surcharge of, 700% of what it costs to originally send it out. Like and
there's surge pricing. Yeah. There's surge pricing that you have to deal with during the holidays. I'm not the biggest fan of having to deal with like FedEx because I have to mail stuff out for this. I actually have to mail something out to Hannah Appel, and I've been really lagging on that. We got to get Hannah her "This Is Revolution" sweatshirt. But yeah, and going through. I think I mailed a T-shirt through FedEx. That's the closest thing near me because they shut down some of the post offices, and it was like $10 to mail a T-shirt.
Yeah, that's real, and that's something where it does add up. If you're sending out one, that sucks. But if you're sending out 10, if you're sending out 100, forget it. Like, I mean, I recently ran a benefit for our label guy from Learning Curve Records, Rainier, and the whole point was to raise money. It was to raise awareness, but also to raise money for his family because he had a heart attack. He got a heart stent put in, so he's out of commission from his day job. All the bills continue to pile up. So that old bon mot of the American healthcare system. And we put this out on CD. A bunch of people bought like the CD, including people all over the world. So I'm sending a CD that's like a cardboard sleeve, like weighs like 2-3 ounces. In some cases, it's like $20, $25 to like get this over, and it's crazy because again, this is a case where this is a benefit. This is like, I get it. The only acceptable way to this is like GoFundMe now, right? But like, this is a way to like not like have him feel the love of this community of bands that he's helped support and grow, and make something cool that like gives something to people for their money too. They're like, hey, there's also this really cool compilation, and you get it. But by the same token, because of how all this stuff that's happened, some of them were like lost, and whatever. It eats into that being effective as a fundraising mechanism for paying his stupid ass medical bills, which he shouldn't be getting anyway because Medicare for all. But anyway,
yeah. Well, that's something. For one. Most of these like UPS, FedEx, stuff like that, if they hit a point in the route where it's hey, it's not cost effective for us to deliver this package, what do? Postal Service, put it onto them. Thank you. Mm-hmm. So in that way too, it's just like it's just another layer of bullshit. But to make sure that we like thoroughly beat up on capitalism, like therein lies the difference. The goal of the USPS is to timely get your packages from one point to another. That's it. They just want to do that as best they can do. Earlier this morning, I was talking with about the Veterans Health Administration with one of the co-hosts, as like the reason why the VA overall performs better than the private healthcare system is just the goal in mind, is healthcare. If you qualify for it, the only thing that they're trying to do is give you the best healthcare they can. It has nothing to do with making a buck. Because they're a government entity, they actually are more cost effective, like the Postal Service. They're not worried about the stakeholders and making sure someone gets a yacht for their for Thursday.
Exactly. Yeah, and I think that's real, man. And that's, we're on the edge of like getting into a much larger discussion about that as well. But I think it's never, unfortunately, we can't divorce the profit motive that comes from some of this stuff.
Well, that's why I was on Ben Burgess' show recently. We were watching Full Metal Jacket, and they're talking about the next movie they want to watch. And I was like, I think RoboCop is a great idea. I've always looked at RoboCop as kind of an explanation for the layperson. If you don't know what neoliberalism is, and you keep hearing that term bantied about, watch RoboCop, and it definitely shows you very comically violently what neoliberalism is. The
original, not that clown ass remake, though.
I never saw the remake. There's a few remakes.
There is no remake.
Karate Kid and yeah, that's how I look at Karate Kid and RoboCop. Won't watch.
Dead or alive.
Like they never made American Godzilla. They never made it. No, never happened. I don't know what you're talking about.
I would never watch.
That's not a remake. That's a Cobra Kai Kills.
Oh, Cobra Kai.
That's not a remake. That's kind of like that's something different, and that's a different show.
Yeah, no, I all hail Omni-consumer.
Yeah.
No,
not a remake.
You touched the third rail on that one. Yeah. Cobra Kai, you better not say nothing about no Cobra Kai. It's different.
Cobra Kai
it's not a remake. It literally isn't a remake, though. That's the thing. Like,
I won't watch, and I think I said this on the show before. I won't watch the remake of Karate Kid, and one of my good friends from high school is a producer on that movie, and I still won't watch it.
That's one with Jackie Chan and the Mr. Miyagi role.
Will Smith won't watch it. Will Smith actually, I think they might even own the rights, because if you look at Cobra Kai, the producers are Will, Jada, and like I think his kids' names are in there too. Cobra Kai. I think that you own a name at a certain point. That's just what. But I wanted to watch RoboCop because I really feel like the way the movie starts, the first scene, that there's a doctor talking about buying a heart. Yeah. Remember?
He's I remember well.
Powered by Yamaha.
Yeah. Well, and it's everything is like there's corporate sponsorships for everything. Like Omnicorp is there's public-private partnerships for policing. like this is real. That's what
RoboCop is ultimately about. That's how he becomes to be. The police turn the running of the police department over to a private corporation, which causes certain cops to want to strike because cops are getting mowed down left and right because the city's so violent. Detroit is so violent. And the whole plan, when in the first 10 minutes of the movie, they talk about the whole plan is we want to, we've devalued everything in the city. We're going to come in and build pretty much a new city and create 2 million new jobs in just Detroit alone. But we want to bring in new people for these new jobs and get rid of the Indians of the city. So we're going to hire a police force. And it's like the problem that we have with cops is they need to sleep. We need 24-hour police officers. And that's when they bring in Ed 209 that shoots the guy up for like a minute and a half, which is really brutal.
You have 10 seconds to comply.
The best part is when the CEO of the corporation sees this big robot blow this man to smithereens, and the man in charge of the program looks over and he goes, "Sorry, sir, it's a little glitch. We'll have that fixed in no time."
It's funny. And Verhoeven, he did an amazing job. And it's unfortunately, it was meant to be a dystopian future, but it's somewhat prescient in a lot of ways.
Oh, God.
Can I just say that like there's a robot, one of those Boston Dynamics robots that kind of looks like Ed 209. I mean, they make these videos of these fools like dancing and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm not thinking about robots dancing.
like the between Boston Dynamics and Nevada trying to make tech cities, like we are barreling towards Skynet in a way that I'm not comfortable with.
And you guys, to me, hit on it. Hey, shout out Erica. You guys hit on it right away when you said, "Aren't we supposed to be going back to brunch because Biden's in office?" And when you have the tech governments and you have robots literally doing the jobs of real people, like this is a problem, and we're not talking about this problem.
Yeah, because we're too busy talking about still talking about like Cheeto Chucklehead and like whatever like nonsense like he's on. Like this fool's been deplatformed and like we're still talking about him. And it's like we have real things that we need to address. I'm not saying ignore it, but it's like this thing that I'm bringing up today, which I'm now pivoting back to, the Postal Service. This is important. But it's subtle in its nuance, and nobody is even paying the slightest bit of attention to it because we're real busy, like, talking about like that chick that was got fired from The Mandalorian, and now she's gonna be making a movie with Ben Shapiro. Can't wait to see what that looks like.
Is she in the movie? Really?
Within hours.
Yeah.
I know she got fired.
Yeah, she got fired, and then she was signing deals in hours. Ben Shabibo, and doing something with they make movies too? I didn't know. Yeah. Or is that what it's
Shapiro
like?
Wrote like 2 books before he was Ben Shapiro.
Well, yeah, I know that he wrote like some
he comes from the spy novel in Hollywood. He's a Hollywood guy.
A failed Hollywood guy.
What is Ben? What is his nexus to Hollywood?
He's comes from a Hollywood family.
Really?
Yeah. Yep. I wouldn't lie about that.
Well, and yeah, so I think it's something where that was probably lined up beforehand, but now there's all of these like, oh, it's cancel culture out of control, like think pieces and stuff that she gets to ride on the wave of.
Let me ask you guys this question.
Parents are producers.
I want to ask you guys this question, and then I'm gonna refill my coffee, but I can hear you guys talking. And I asked this to the chat as well. For the few people that are still sticking around, I want to know what you guys think about this. There was a case 8 years ago, and I'm sure you guys all saw the video. A young Asian woman runs into an elevator, and she looks like she's hiding from something, and you see her press all the buttons, and she kind of creeps over the side and looks, and she looks hella frightened, and then she walks out, looks like she's talking to somebody, and she disappears, and 2 weeks later, she's found in the water tower of this hotel that she was staying at, dead. And there's been a lot of mystery around her death since it happened, right? Do you guys remember that?
No. It sounds like set up for like The Ring or
it's a dark like water. Her life literally is like the dark water story. Dark water. I'll find the clip. You guys are pieces of shit. I'll find it. You guys are pieces of shit.
You just bring us on to the break.
Damn.
Well, because you guys are 29 million people saw this motherfucking video, but I'm the one watching it 29 million times.
How many million people in the United States? How many billion people on the like how many billion people are connected to the internet? Don't like 29 million. That's not doing numbers. I got tweets that do more than that.
Look, man, I'm trying to save the U.S. Postal Service. I don't have time for this nonsense.
That fool said he got to it.
I'm sorry. I never saw
You're talking about practice?
Practice, man.
Not the video.
Okay, so hold on. I'm going to get to cancel culture with this. I want to get you guys' take. So now that you motherfuckers haven't seen this damn thing, let me cue it up.
This, huh?
You guys definitely had seen this footage before. So here's
do the homework.
Here's the woman.
All right.
Here we go. So she goes to the elevator, and you see her like she's hiding, and then she like peeks, like, oh shit. This is a real thing. This isn't a movie at all. This isn't fake. This really happened. Like, what is she hiding from? You never saw this footage?
No. Am I gonna?
We've established that.
I'm like nervous. What's gonna happen to this lady? Is she gonna be okay?
Oh no, she ends up getting killed.
No.
Yeah, not here, but this is the only.
Why is the damn elevator not moving? Like, what's up? Is this one of those, like, my old apartment complex on Claremont? Like, it had an elevator, took forever like this, but it was like 1920s. This is not a 1920s elevator.
So someone is talking about what actually happened. So this video footage went viral of this woman very quickly, and a lot of internet detectives were trying to figure out what happened to her because, again, 2 weeks later, police find her in a water tower on top of this hotel in downtown Los Angeles, which is, if you don't know downtown Los Angeles, it's where Skid Row is. This hotel was literally on the same street as Skid Row. And part of the hotel had turned into low-income housing, so there was a few floors in the hotel that had people from the neighborhood staying on there, and she was staying in the hostel part of the hotel. So as police often do, not all of the information of the case becomes public. So there were definitely a lot of aspects of what happened to this young lady. Look, this is where it gets really creepy. Right? Isn't that creepy as shit?
Yeah, like, why is she doing, like...
Yeah. So they end up finding her in a water tower, dead, because there were some people staying there and their water had turned black. And they're like, whoa, why is our water black? They go inspect the water tower and she had been in there.
Yeah.
So all these internet detectives are like, what happened to... Okay, Billionaire Boys Club is a whole nother episode that I'm hella down. Whenever you guys want to have that episode, because
welcome to Watching YouTube with Jason. Because
I definitely love that movie, or not movie, that story. So
program presents an investigation.
So these internet detectives find a video, and Conan, you're gonna love this, of a Latin cat that's a black metal musician, and he posts a video 2 days after she dies. And if you guys don't know the genre of black metal, it's very dark. And it's always about Satan and almost like childlike idea of what Satan is, right? So this black metal musician posts a video of him chasing a woman and killing her. And apparently he stayed in the same hotel. And so all these internet detectives are like, this is the guy that killed her, this evil dude. And they start going down a rabbit hole of his videos when he's wearing the corpse paint. He's loving Satan. He's got candles behind him. He has really dark music. If you know the genre,
as you do.
Yeah, he's not.
Well, at first, when you said black metal artist,
oh, you thought he was like a brother?
I thought you were just talking like describing
like
yourself.
Detroit.
Yeah. Like, so going up, like, it's a black metal dude, not me. No. Somebody else,
like King's X, you mean?
Yeah,
no.
But it was like, but black metal is a genre.
It's a genre, yeah. Satanism is.
So he's not a black metal dude.
Was he black?
I am a black metal dude with a dude that plays black metal.
Okay,
got it.
I'm in Oakland, California. I'm in East Oakland right now. I was in West Oakland for a long time, but now I just got to East Oakland.
If you've ever seen that cartoon series Metalocalypse on Adult Swim, like those dudes are like, the full on caricature of like the black metal dudes.
And this guy was kind of a caricature of that, right? So all these people on the internet go, you killed this woman. You have to admit it. You killed this woman. They're telling the police office, you killed this woman. This guy's friends have started hitting him up. They're like, hey, man, did you kill some Asian lady in fucking LA? Did
you forget about that?
He goes, I wasn't in. No. So the guy makes a video because at this point, people have gotten his YouTube banned. All of his social media has gotten taken down because they said that he killed this woman and people really believe it. And so the guy goes and makes a video, but he covers his face because he's afraid at this point. He goes, they found out who I was.
Yeah.
And so he covers his face and he disguises his voice, probably what he should have done. It looked even more scary than the original videos. And he goes, I did not kill that woman. I was not there when it happened. And so when the police go investigate, they're like, well, this guy was not.
Like West Memphis 3, man.
Coden, the guy, dig it, wasn't in the country when the girl was at the hotel. He stayed there literally a year before.
Yeah.
He just posted that video a year later. And he's got proof. He's like, look, I had a record deal. I was recording my album.
Yeah.
He showed the contract. He had proof he was in the studio. He goes, I wasn't there. He feels that he's been canceled. And, you know, in an interview in this documentary that just came out, he goes, I stopped doing music because I couldn't. Because everybody thought I killed this woman. And now that it's come out that the woman was just really off her meds, there was no foul play whatsoever. The lid to the water tower was open. And she had a very manic episode. And there's more details that now have become public that weren't public before about her behavior at the hotel.
Sure.
She climbed up it, went for what she thought was a swim, and it's a water tower. They're using the water, so the water goes up and down, and she kind of got caught up in the flow of the up and down water, and she drowned. And the guy was like, so he's like, this is cancel culture. What do you guys think?
I don't know if I would call that cancel culture per se. I usually attribute cancel culture to overt social commentary, political statements, or some type of online activity, verbal or otherwise, that is considered to be outside of the acceptable barometer of the social media chatterati that will get you banned from maybe lose your job. This guy didn't really engage in any discourse. He just was mistaken identity. I think this is I don't know if it's cancel culture.
It also happened when there was a video of some guy that killed some cats on the internet. The internet detectives found the wrong person. And same thing happened. They kind of bullied him, and he already had some mental issues, and he committed suicide.
Yeah.
So what do we? Is it someone says internet vigilante culture, but you don't call it cancel culture?
Well,
I'm just asking a question. I don't know the answer.
So I can go. Or I can wait. You know, it's fine. I feel like the words cancel culture have been appropriated just how fake news was. And in the way that like fake news used to mean something entirely different. Then it was appropriated by an idiot who used it for political goods and basically redefined it to mean something that applies to him. And I feel like cancel culture has become such a loaded phrase that is specifically designed for these cry bullies to be like, oh, you know, they're canceling us. This is cancel culture. It's out of control. Political correctness, et cetera, et cetera. And it's an extension of the same. It's a more focused thing that comes from the political correctness arguments back in the 90s. And, you know, what is, you know, that they, on their side, they say it's thought crime, right? Oh, it's thought crime. You can't have different opinions. And that's ridiculous. It just means that, you know, it's like, well, if it isn't the consequences of my actions. Is more like what it is. The problem is it's been hijacked to mean specifically that, and specifically meaning usually right-wing style speech. That said, cancel culture, if that's, and I wish we had a better phrase to use, but these kinds of things, if you look at something like, you know, a Joss Whedon is a perfect example. He's back in the news today, this week as being a creep because he was being an asshole too on a Justice League, which he's doing the new Justice League, I guess. But like, there's from years and years back, this was known from his time doing Buffy the Vampire Slayer and Angel that he was a bit of a skeeve, and like it was a known thing that came out. And now we're getting this second wave of like, oh, I can't believe it. You know, that guy sucks. And for me, that's again the consequences of your actions coming back to you. Now, in this case, the problem nobody wants to talk about is that when you have this mob mentality, the mob doesn't always get it right. John Ronson wrote a book, and this is like 6-7 years ago, maybe, called So You've Been Publicly Shamed.
Yeah.
Really good book. And I'm a big fan of John Ronson. I think it's super... It's an interesting and nuanced take on things. And one of the reasons why, and isn't to say that like again, I'm all for freedom of speech, but I'm not about freedom from consequences. But in certain cases, people get consequences, and it's the wrong people, and that's the problem when you have the mob running things. And I also feel like, and I think we talked about this if not this time, maybe the time before that, where when you have a position of people where people feel like there is no justice happening, they are going to mete out justice in any way that they can.
I agree.
And just like I don't believe the death penalty should exist, because I believe if you think first of all, I don't think government should be in the business of killing people, period. But if you think the death penalty should exist, that means you think the government has never got it wrong. We've never got it wrong on any of these people.
Or won't get it wrong.
Yeah, or won't get it wrong.
Even if you
really
think USA, yeah,
it's wrong. Really?
Oh yeah, it's been 10 out of 10. Never made a mistake yet. It's like,
no, hasn't happened. Never happened.
Is that gonna hold?
Undefeated.
So what do you guys think? So when stuff like, and this again,
well, so I think like
on same time, the internet detectives were like, nope, we found the guy. It's this guy, and it wasn't that guy.
Yeah, no, I think a lot of what Conan is saying is like just spot on about what a little bit of like what cancel culture is, or at least like, because at first we have PC that is just large in part a list of things that is just acceptable discourse.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there's rules in Congress like, hey, you're not allowed to address another member of Congress directly.
Mm-hmm.
And that's actually something in most, like, you know, legislative bodies or whatever the hell. You're not allowed to address another person directly. Is that free? Is that a confine on freedom of speech? Yes, 100%. You know, is that something that's designed to be beneficial to the greater society and that we've accepted? Yeah, another thing too. There's zero people who are called, like Ted Cruz cries about cancel culture. Donald Trump's lawyers, his defense lawyers for his impeachment, have said cancel culture multiple times. And so, like, if they are now coming to the point where, Trump is doing all his bullshit and they're saying, oh, well, now just trying to give some sort of semblance of justice or repercussions for his actions. Oh, no, you can't do that. That's just cancel culture. Well, like, you know, at that point, how far does it go? Oh, hey, I robbed a bank, but you're just trying to cancel me for it. So it's bullshit.
Cancel culture's out of control.
Yeah.
Well, Pascal, what do we do when things like this?
I mean, the thing is though, is that, you know, I don't think that we should necessarily, to address Conan's point, celebrate that mob either. Like, I'm one of the most recent examples of cancel culture that I found to be kind of egregious with what happened to Nathan Robinson of Current Affairs. I don't know if you guys were aware that he kind of made a sarcastic statement on Twitter about, you know, the United States always having to fund the Israeli military in every single kind of legislative allotment that it proposes. And he was kind of being tongue in cheek, but his editor at The Guardian was following him and sending this long letter lambasting him, and he got fired on the spot. And for simply making a sarcastic comment, you know, about the obviously particular relationship the United States has with Israel, in which we finance their military development and give tremendous, I think something like $3 billion a year in aid to the Israeli government. And there's a history of the Israeli government's treatment of Palestinians and so on and so forth. And I was wondering, are all these right-wingers who are crying about cancel culture, are they going to stand up and defend Nathan Robinson? And I was actually watching, you know, don't blame me, I was watching Katie Halper last night, and she had an episode with Nathan Robinson on it, and she highlighted some tweets from Barry Weiss and Thomas Chatterton Williams, two individuals that I both found rather noxious and kind of vile. But if you guys don't remember, Chatterton Williams and Barry Weiss were both signatories to that, I believe, was it a Harper's letter or that letter?
Harper's Review letter, yeah.
Harper's Review letter about a bunch of people in the Chattering class, intellectuals, decrying the danger of cancel culture and how this has become intolerable, and we're a free and open society. And first of all, like for me, right, as someone who's like trained in the law, let's get some terms correct, right? Freedom of speech protects you from government encroachment on your free expression, not private individual. Like, you don't have a constitutional freedom of speech amongst your private employer. That doesn't exist. Freedom, okay? Constitutional freedom of expression and speech protects you from the state encroaching on your freedom of speech. Now, the larger, more expanded notion of freedom of expression, in which you should not get reprisal from your employer for exercising your freedom of speech, that's not protected constitutional speech. That's why there's no legal repercussion for this cancel culture stuff. So when we talk about, well, what should we do, one thing we can't do is expect that these people are being denied constitutional protection from them exercising these rights that they don't have, because they don't have them, because the Constitution doesn't give you that type of protection. So I wish that people would get that right. So I hear people saying that, well, we shouldn't just be talking about the skinny, limited, right to expression. I'm like, what do you mean skinny, limited? This is the constitutional framework in which we have. Now, I am not saying that just because our Constitution has a more limited framework of what it explains as being the right to self-expression. What I am saying is that I also agree that having private corporations or private individuals jeopardize the employment of other individuals because of their right to express themselves, I don't support that. I don't think that's particularly good. I think that opens, particularly those of us who have politics on the left, to greater reprisal that we may actually be willing to face for our political opinions. At the same time, there is certain right-wing reactionary discourse that can cause harm. And I think that type of discourse, hate speech, for example, racist hate speech, planning of actual harm, incendiary behavior, planning of riots, should be within the law of being circumscribed and be dealt with in the confines of the legislation we already have to preclude that type of speech. We have hate speech laws, we have incitement laws, and I think we should deal with them in that fashion. So that's kind of how I view this cancel culture phenomenon within kind of the confines of the law. I hope I didn't take too much time.
No, I think, like, if I could just add on too, is like when you talk about like how focusing on more laws will ultimately be used against the left is something that I think we're seeing, like, kind of like in real time with the insurrection. Sorry, and now the talk. Am I good now? Sorry. Now the talk of
they're trying to censor you.
It was like, and people were, censorship, but like also too, it's like the other people was like, hey, do we need a Patriot Act 2.0? Do we need laws against domestic terrorism? All blah, 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 this, that, whatever. And it's like that's where you see, like, no, we already have laws on the books that make, some of them make sense.
Yep.
And any time that there's like a reactionary cry for more control to stop one thing, it very, very often, if the controls of power are left in neoliberals and neoconservatives, well, guess what? Where is that power going to be used against? The left.
Yeah, and if I may also tag on that. First of all, completely agreed with we don't need more laws. We need to examine and in some cases enforce have. Completely against the Patriot Act was since the very beginning. And that's a perfect example of like there being massive overreach and exploiting, never let good tragedy go to waste, right? Whatever that saying is. Being used for nefarious ends. And again, I think it is important to also remember what, and Pascal very eloquently stated, freedom of speech actually means, which is freedom of speech, not in private enterprise. Like you're just like your employer is not bound to let you say whatever you want without consequence. That's right. That's not a thing. And so in this case, getting back to Gina Carano and her being dismissed by Disney off The Mandalorian, she not only expressed support for Trump, she will charitably say criticism towards COVID and masking, and also specifically said some kind of nasty stuff about trans folks. Now, something important to remember is Pedro Pascal, star of The Mandalorian, his sister is trans. So I think that might have something to do with it. But let's be clear. She was on track to they were going to spin off that character to have her own show. That character's pretty badass, I got to say. It was a bummer for me when I found out she was expressing these kinds of views, because I was like, oh, that sucks. I think that character's kind of cool. Rose from the Poster Children characterized her. She's like, yeah, I really like seeing beefy women with guns on TV shows. And I thought that was pretty great. Because I'm like, yeah, I can get down with that. That's cool. But she basically threw away a franchise just because she didn't have the motor control to just not air these kind of views that clearly are divisive, knowing full well that this is Disney. Star Wars is owned by Disney. Like you think that they're I'm not saying that they're the best or anything. I have strong feelings about Disney and large mega corporations, but man, shut your damn mouth if you you know what I mean. Well, the statement she made, the last thing I was going to say on that is it was real quick, is that the idea and the attack behind this is well, you're barring her from future employment, you're barring her from being able to do anything else. It's like, well, not really. She hooked up with Ben Shapiro 45 minutes or so afterwards. It's like there's a circuit for these people. Maybe they can make a sequel to that movie about the liberals hunting the conservatives that came out last year. I was like, man, you got to be kidding me with this. Really? You guys hear about that? Some horror movie where it was like, there's going to be a cottage. And granted, this is some goof ass bullshit.
No, they got the movie canceled. Hold on. That movie you're describing, they actually got that movie canceled. Because
who got it canceled?
Conservatives.
Got the movie about that's supposed to be pro-conservative canceled.
It's like streaming on some kind of something or other now. I don't know. It's streaming on Ben Shapiro's Facebook. Who the fuck knows? But but the point of fact with all that is that I'm not convinced that wasn't a Brer Rabbit situation. You know what I mean? That they made this kind of, I'm just gonna assume, mediocre movie about this dumb thing that only it's like those Left Behind things, right? And then they're like, oh, well, they're oppressing us. They're oppressing us. Yeah. And it's like, no, they're not oppressing you. But by the same token, liberals, and I guess the appropriate term to use is neoliberals, the right is right about a couple things, and one of which is that there's a certain segment of the Democratic Party that does want to censor stuff. I'm going all the way back to the PMRC here. Tipper Gore.
Oh, Tipper Gore in the PMRC. The Democrat's wife.
Exactly. People forget, because that was 100,000 years ago. But I mean, that is real, and unfortunately, because of that's being real, and there not being any sense of consequences for that either. Yeah, I mean, they can tie that into that frame, make themselves into victim. Gina Carano, she's now like a martyr for the right, and I'm sure half these fools never even saw The Mandalorian. You know what I mean? But
no, actually, most of them were pissed that she was in The Mandalorian in the first place, and wasn't just a damsel. She was actually a character that did stuff. Yeah.
Beefy woman with a gun, like Rose Marshall.
At first, I think most of these people were like, "Oh, why is this person in here?"
Was there a tacitly feminist kind of tone to The Mandalorian because she's
her character definitely specifically.
Her character kicks ass. I mean, that character is great. It's a bummer.
And let's keep in mind, she was the first female star of the UFC. Actually, a friend of mine from school was her manager when she was a fighter. I don't know if she still represents her now.
You're right. That's the world she comes from. I forgot to mention that. Yeah.
Yeah, and she was a champion in the UFC.
Yeah. Oh yeah, she was big deal.
So, and she's been in movies for a minute. I mean, she definitely spun off movies relatively quickly from her fighting days. The fact that she's a little older now and has put on some weight and has found her way to not just be on a show, but then to get her own spinoff. I was like, oh, that's pretty awesome. But when I saw what she said, I was like, this is silly.
Yeah, and I think like the last thing that did it was her comparing how America treats conservatives
to how anti-Semites and Nazis treated Jews.
Crystal knocked.
Yes.
Yep. Put pictures up of Crystal knocked.
That was real.
Her whole point was like, it wasn't the Nazis at first. It was like the regular people. So this is the precursor to what fascism looks like. If you criticize me for my political beliefs, one of my points of this whole thing is, honestly, until other people started sharing what she said, it never would have been on my radar.
Yeah,
I don't follow Gina Carano. I didn't know she had Twitter.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I love that show. I think The Mandalorian's like one of the best Star Wars things, right? And it's basically Lone Wolf and Cub plus like, you know, old school cowboy movies,
Space
like
Cowboys.
You know, like, and I love it for that because I think it's well done and well executed. And I thought her character was great. And I was like, oh, they're gonna give her a spinoff? Right on, cool. But then like somebody was like, hey, you know, she said some pretty ugly stuff. And I'm like, oh hell.
But was it fireable though?
No, wait, let's take a consensus and the chat can participate. Do we all agree that she should not have been canceled?
I think she shouldn't have been fired.
You say she should not have been fired?
No.
Ooh.
I say because of this. I despise what she says. Despise what she said.
Yeah.
But I think it's so ignorant that they could have taken her aside and been like, this is why you don't say this. Because she also pushed back, but what no one's bringing up is she also pushed back her trans comments as well, and had a bit of an apology for those. So she seems to be one of these people that just talks out of her ass, doesn't understand what she's saying and how it's hurting people. And someone explains, "Hey, man, this is actually hurting people." Oh,
fire. So like that's things like so like right now it's like if I'm putting myself in Disney's point of view, because like that's like on the principle of actually like teaching someone so they grow, they don't continue saying ignorant shit that hurts people. 100%, absolutely. But if I'm Disney exec, no, can her ass immediately, and I'm still do the show, and I'm still do her show, and I go find some other name, some other person, and I still do everything exact same, and just say, listen, we found someone better. Why? Because at that point, like, what is Disney about? Making money, right? Like, so like that, if they want to continue selling, can make appeasing conservatives is never going to be how you sell the most, whatever you're trying to sell in entertainment and media.
They're talking about getting Lucy Lawless. They're talking about getting her to do Lawless.
I thought she was problematic as hell. I thought she was
Kevin Sorbo.
Oh, was it Kevin
Sorbo? Yeah, TV
very far right.
But yeah, either way, I would immediately see you, bye, and just go out and find another name.
Who's the guy that plays Star-Lord? Who's Star-Lord?
Chris
Pratt. So old tweets, bless you, Sneezy. There's some old tweets of Chris Pratt of him making some comments about the N-word.
Ooh, spicy.
Really? Okay.
And Chris Pratt said something along the lines of, and this is from like, 8-9 years ago. He said something along the lines of, he goes, an N-word, saying the N-word with a hard R is funny, and you can't tell me it's not. Something along those lines. And I think he wrote out like the N-word. He didn't say. And then he said some other things about Muslims. He goes, I'm afraid of Muslims. And I couldn't tell if it was like an edgy joke. I don't think it was an actual righteous fear. I don't find it funny.
Yeah, that's the first problem. It wasn't funny at all.
Yeah, it's not funny.
Is that a joke? Yeah. Is it, Bill?
Erica Whelan says, on the one hand, I'm uncomfortable with people being fired for things they say outside of work. On the other hand, she was a wingnut.
That's real.
Yeah, no, and so actually too, it's like if you have a spokesperson, someone that is the face of a brand, you know, how they act outside of work, right? That like, does that play in? Do you like, would you agree that
Well,
whenever,
James
like,
Gunn caught a bunch. Speaking of another Guardians of the Galaxy, he caught a bunch of hell for some jokes that he made on Twitter years before. It gets to the point where I don't want to have to examine this woman's Twitter feed because there's a lot of horrible people that are in movies.
yeah,
and we're not talking about the Bill Cosby level of horrible.
We're
just talking about
James Caan, man. I mean, you know,
John fucking Wayne.
Yeah. I mean, I agree with that. With Gina specifically, though, it's just like it was one IG post, just like
Jabir says she was warned. Jabir's on the chat. Shout out Jabir Fakir. He's on the chat and he says she was warned multiple times to fucking watch it.
Yeah. If she was warned and like still kept on, that's different. That's I mean, that's sort of like, man, you can't, because the way I would look at it, right? If you're tied up in something, first of all, it's Star Wars, but now Star Wars is also Disney. If you're tied in something like that, you got to know there's a lot of eyes on everything you do. And that means a bunch of things. That means like, hey, there's a lot of eyes on everything you do. Cool. Lots of people are going to see me do my work and like being this cool thing. But there's a lot of eyes on what you do, which means, hey, maybe don't have verbal diarrhea and say anything that comes out of your little brain. You know what I mean? Like maybe, put a guardrail on.
As a private in the military,
managers. I mean, where is her management? I mean, don't they have a responsibility to let her know? I mean, as I'm not
Don King's a manager
in the entertainment industry, right? What I'm saying is that shouldn't we be at the stage in the entertainment world where when you get a contract to appear in a major kind of commercial production, your agent or management talks to you about social media protocol? Like, am I too naive to assume that these conversations should be being had as a normal part of the function of?
Have you ever tried to tell a celebrity no?
Yeah, I wouldn't say like it's not naive to think that should be a thing. That's like it's like a normal thought. Like, because I was about to say, like, we get like as a like nothing. You're nobody in the military. Like, they tell you everything that you do in and out of uniform reflects on the United States Marine Corps. Doesn't matter if you're on base, off base, on deployment, off deployment, you're home on leave, at a bar, doesn't matter. You're a United States Marine and you will conduct yourself as such. That simple conversation never happens. And one of the things too is like, oh, hey, you've been warned. Well, at this point, this lady is just immature. You know, they like, no amount of adults in the room is probably going to help her until she actually like learns, right? And like, hey, maybe and she's not going to learn, right? Because she got the Disney thing taken away, and then right after, you know, Ben Shapiro comes along and saves the day. But no, yeah, like what you're saying, Pascal, it's like the same thing. It's like it should be just the basic to say, listen, you can't go spouting off and saying all types of wild shit.
I don't know. Again, my friend that was her manager, this was years ago when she was still fighting, and I don't know if she represents her from the Hollywood standpoint, because that's a totally different level of agent, and you're dealing with on a different level. Bless you. But never had any. I never heard any bad Gina Carano stories about her being like difficult, you know, or racist. But I also think at a certain level, some of that shit when you're an agent / manager is in one out the other, right? Because you hear so much horrible shit.
So she said somewhat anti-Semitic and COVID denial, transphobic and racist stuff. What's the racist stuff?
Well, I think that's the Jewish comment.
Yeah. I was gonna say I think that's probably the sum totality of on that particular piece of it. But she definitely she backed it off, but she said some ugly transphobic stuff too. And like
apparently she like made some weird comments about pronouns. Like, she basically said in her name on Twitter, she put beep boop, bop beep, beep beep boop, and she tried to do that to of people who put pronouns next to their actual names on social media.
Yeah, it was in the name of mockery, and like then like she was challenged on it, and she kind of doubled down a little bit, and I was like, all right, man. And then like, but yeah, as well, Erica just pointed out in the chat something I was about to say, that like there was a bunch of anti-Black Lives Matter stuff, and she was not saying it herself, but doing like the Trump thing of like liking the tweets and, you know, retweeting a couple of them, where it's like, all right, sure, you're not saying that, but again, and going back to like, you would think there'd be someone in entertainment law that would have like this contract be signed, you know, to be like, hey, you know, don't be a knucklehead on social media. You know, we reserve the right to dismiss you without cause. You know, if we feel that that's been breached. That it's not just what someone explicitly says, right? It's how people conduct themselves in what we can term the public square. And that goes back to our last conversation about like, you know, are these private corporations or public square, right? And that's a different thing. But I think Disney is well in their right to do what they did. I think it's actually probably the right move. She's not the main character on that show. The way that show works, like he wanders in, does like a side mission, you know, like I need you to get this gem from the blah 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 mine or whatever, and like whatever, like, you know, all you need Grogu, you need Mandalorian running around. That's all you need. That's the show. The fact that she had her own show lined up, there was a spinoff of that. I was like, cool. I'll see what's up with that character. That character's cool.
I was very shocked that I'm shocked that Disney doesn't.
Baby Yoda, the other
Baby Yoda's Grogu. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
I'm surprised that they don't do their adult stars like they do the children, because you know the children are on strict lockdown. They treat those kids like the old school Hollywood system, where it's like, we're going to create your life, we're going to create your love interests in quote unquote real life. You just shut up and follow the rules. If we say you're 12 and you're really 18, bitch, you're fucking 12. I'm surprised they don't do that with the adults, and I think moving forward they might. And I wonder if this is going to hamper in some way what they're trying to do with these quote unquote edgier movies, swallowing up people like Ryan Reynolds, who actually doesn't really say anything bad in his personal life, but Deadpool into the Disney canon of all these Marvel films. I wonder how this is going to look moving forward when you have to clamp down on the speech of people to that level, because they're going to have to.
But I mean, Deadpool is like basically Bugs Bunny as a superhero. You know what I mean? Like he never says anything like that would be, and so it's like one of those things where I think there might be a bit of a pass. Also, Ryan Reynolds isn't, you know, he's there's lots of stuff I can say about Ryan Reynolds, but he's not like a loose cannon.
He doesn't say horrible stuff.
And also, I just want to say, I think it's wild that Gina Carano ended up being the one, you know, causing all the trouble and all the ruckus. Because I remember in that show, Bill Burr got brought into that show, and I was like, oh damn. All right, let's see what happens here. And Bill Burr conducted himself like a champion. You know, everyone was like waiting for him to like say something and piss somebody off, and it was like, oh no, good on Bill Burr. He kept the gate closed for any of that, and like the only
Bill Burr has one thing that Gina Carano doesn't have, and he has a black wife.
And that made all the difference.
Yeah. Well, I like a lot of the shit Bill Burr says, and I saw his Saturday Night Live monologue, and I thought it was right fucking on. I dug it.
He's funny. I like him, but you know, I don't mean I wholesale endorse everything he's ever said, but I don't
think Bill Burr is a racist. I just think that because he doesn't talk too much about his wife. He doesn't talk about his private like that. He doesn't like my black wife and I went and do some black. She doesn't say. He did tell those jokes.
We did some mixed race couple things. It was great.
But you know, he has that going for him to the point where if he was to say something, you know, I don't know. Someone said, and I don't know how true this is. They said they're a little easier on the men than they are the women when it comes to saying shit like this. And I don't know. How do you guys feel about that? Do you think people are a little harder on the women? I think they're harder on anybody.
Yeah,
I think. Oh, sorry.
I feel like that, like with the Instagram picture that I saw that Gina put up.
Yeah,
that plus already a history of having been told like you're saying terrible things. Stop. I don't think that it would have been any different. And like, but it also depends on like who is the actual character. If the lead character, you know, if They're already getting the habit of like, oh, we gotta apologize again. You know, if it was a lead character, that it might have been different. But if this is like one of those things where Disney could just say like, oh yeah, we'll give you the axe because we can refill this role, like that, like it's not gonna be a fucking problem. Also, I mean, like,
show, yeah,
like, there's hella like WWE people that like you could just get the most famous one and say, all right, here we go. Now we're making money again. Never stopped. So yeah, I mean, I don't know. I'm all right with this, but like I'm not sure if it's.
Well, I got a good example for you on that, Marcus, which is 2 words: Roseanne Barr.
Ooh.
Right? Like she got to like strike 25 or something before they finally like, put the axe to that. But she was a huge star. Like it was her name on the marquee, right?
Yeah. So. Yep. Exactly.
But before Roseanne said that horrible shit, I remember a friend, this is like years ago, she used to have a radio show, or maybe it was an early podcast, and she brought on Michael Jackson's manager to talk about the inequity when it comes to black promoters and artists and white artists and promoters. And I don't know if a lot of people know this. If you are a black promoter and you're trying to get a certain white artist, let's say you're a black promoter and you want to get, I don't know, who's a hot white? What's the white chick's name everybody likes? Billie Eilish. Her agent, I don't know you people. No comment.
Don't put it on me, man.
I'm trying to keep it at a minimum right now.
If I'm some famous, wow, Coden's sister. All right.
Yeah. My cousin Billie Eilish, right? Yeah.
So Billie Eilish. If you want to get Billie Eilish and you're a black promoter, you want to get her to come to a certain market that maybe she doesn't play in normally, the agency will say that her deposit is going to be a lot higher than if you were a white, because you have to pay a deposit when you want to get an artist. And so Roseanne was talking about with this guy about how she wasn't allowed to play a black market when she was coming up during her show. So when the show wasn't filming, I'm getting an echo there. So when the show wasn't filming, she would go do stand-up stuff. And she would want to play black audiences because she knew she did well in black audiences, but her agency was like, no, you can't play black audiences. So it was interesting to see her say this like horribly racist shit after like listening to this 1.5 hour podcast episode of her talking about the problems with racism within the industry that she exists in, and
the
then
political economy of race in entertainment.
Yeah,
well, it's doubly a bummer too because Roseanne, as a show, was one of the only shows that really showed a working class family. This wasn't the Huxtables, you know what I mean? Like, well,
it was multiracial.
Cosby, but
she talked about how she tried to work that into the show as well, having different ethnicities on the show to show that they didn't live in this just plain Wonder Bread white world in Illinois. Again, that was quite a few years before she makes her statement.
Yeah,
I think the war on terror made her help turn her to reactionary politics.
Yeah. But I have to wonder too is that if she would have done the right thing and said, "Hey, if these agents are keeping me from performing in front of a black audience, I should get rid of these agents." It was like the company you keep. Maybe it's not just like a Roseanne before and after. It was like, no, Roseanne maybe used to be cool, and then spending a lot of time with racist ass people who wouldn't even let you engage with black people. Maybe, that's going to, help you buy into being a piece of shit, probably. Right?
You can't fly with the eagles if you're riding with turkeys.
Yeah.
You can't fly with the eagles if you're riding with turkeys.
And on that note, we've been talking for 2.5 hours, and that's a long time. I love everybody that is here with me right now. Pascal Robert, of course, my brother Conan, of course, brother Marcus. I am going to leave with playing a clip, as I always do. It's like my thing. I will also say, if you guys are enjoying what you're seeing and you'd like to help the show grow, think about becoming a patron. We found out how to add some bonus incentives in the patronage, where you get mugs and sweatshirts and t-shirts and all kinds of shit.
Please subscribe. Hit the subscribe button.
Definitely hit the subscribe
Hit the
button.
bell. Like, share.
Follow Left Flank Vets on Twitch. Tuesday, we will be watching episode 1 of Adam Curtis's new documentary, Can't Get You Out of My Head. Conan, are you an Adam Curtis guy?
Yeah, I want to see that one. I'm just trying to figure out if to watch that before I watch
Judas.
The new Fred Hampton movie. Yeah, because I was actually going to watch that last night, and I was like, should I watch that before or after?
I watched it last night.
Then I watched Baby Driver instead. So
Baby Driver.
That's good. That movie is good, man.
I watched the Fred Hampton movie last night, and it left me feeling a lot of feelings. And then I had to go watch a series of weird documentaries that ended with me watching RoboCop, getting ready for the Ben Burgess episode that I'll be on at 2 o'clock in the morning. And don't watch RoboCop at 2 o'clock in the morning.
I feel like it's always on cable at 2 o'clock in the morning.
Which
I'm not mad at. I'm not mad at that.
But I'm gonna play the intro to this episode to get you guys ready. So we'll be on Left Flank Vets Tuesday. Pascal, me, and Marcus are going to be watching this documentary. So I want to give you guys the first little intro into it, where Adam Curtis talks about what this is about. This show is called This Is Revolution. This documentary definitely deals with the mindset of being a real revolutionary, trying to forget the old world and see a new and better way, and being disillusioned by that new and better way. And of course, as only Adam Curtis can do, he gets very, very deep into it. It's a 6-part series, and this is just the intro to part 1. I'm going to play a little bit, and I'm going to stop it right when it gets good, so you guys can go find it. And I'm a douchebag. So
just real quick, save the U.S. Postal Service. Save the U.S. Postal Service. Text, call, write your representatives, dismiss the Board of Governors, fire Louis DeJoy, save the U.S. Postal Service. You can do this. Text resist. You can do it through ResistBot. It's real easy.
Maybe we should start a hashtag, right? Fire Louis DeJoy, see if it catches on.
Yeah, like snappy. Like,
yes, we should.
Dump DeJoy. Dump DeJoy. You know,
everybody's like, who's Joy?
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, if that's what we got to do, man. Like, all I know is I tried doing this, and like I've gotten 12 people from like moderate to big indie labels liking the tweet, and nobody doing a goddamn thing. So that's it. Facebook post did do a little bit.
I do want to get into this because Marcus actually has some history in politics.
Yeah, well, and I'll say this is like
his dad was the black alderman in Good Times.
Holy crap! What I
come from the dynasty, you know what I'm saying? Political dynasty. I'll say that I was like, if it makes a difference, right? I used to be like, I've been a staffer before. It makes a difference. If you don't think just getting 3 people to make a phone call will make a difference, they will take those 3 phone calls and think about 3,000 people give a shit about this.
Yep.
Right. They just if one person's willing to make a phone call, at least 1,000 people right off the bat, they'll think at least 1,000 people give a shit about this. So what happens if you just get 10 people to call?
Exactly.
You don't think that you don't have to create this groundswell and protest and banging on all these people's door. It's like just getting half a dozen people, get 6 people just to pick up their phone, to send an email. You can send faxes. I wish I had the website handy, but that's Conan. I want to make sure I send you this stuff, but it's an easy way to actually fax the representatives directly. So it's anything that takes 5 minutes, they literally do actually count this shit.
Well, and that's one of the reasons I think ResistBot is so great, because you can actually write a letter. Like, if you send us an email, you can send us a physical letter out to your representative just by being on your phone. Because that's like, what's the biggest complaint? Oh, I don't have a printer. I don't have any of this. Exactly. There's services to do all this stuff. And again, I think it's real important too. Educate your rep about this. Don't assume they know. They don't.
Yep.
They got a lot of stuff going on. They got a you know what I mean? And I'm not trying to make excuses. I'm just trying to say that I think I've literally heard that from people. Oh, well, I got a good Democratic rep. They know what's up.
No, they don't. It's impossible for somebody to know that much knowledge. As we drag this out a little bit longer, it's just impossible for somebody. All right.
Factzero.com. That's what it is.
There it is. Yeah. Yes.
So somebody put it on the Twitch chat, factzero.com. So if you guys can see this right here, I'm posting it up. Definitely posting it up so you guys can see. We got some good shows coming up next week. Next Saturday, we'll have Marcus on as well, but we're also going to be talking with the Margaret Kimberly, for one of Pascal's cohorts with the Black Agenda Report.
Indeed.
We don't know who we're talking to yet Tuesday because I forgot. So,
well, I just want to say thanks as always for having me on. It's always a pleasure. And
oh, dude, this is. Oh yes, the new record, Jenny, for taking that picture.
And designed by Mr. Michael Cobra, designer of your logo.
Yes, the person that did Conan's album cover and a couple album covers for you, right?
Not just this one, but I worked with some other stuff before. But yeah, record's called Dark Passengers. Got the vinyl yesterday. Learning Curve Records, neutronfriends.bandcamp.com. Shipping as soon as I buy some goddamn LP and they fix the post office.
Thank you for enjoying the energy Marcus brings to the show. That's the youth. That's the youth vote.
Right.
So I'm gonna play this clip. And again, right when it gets good, right when you guys are going, oh wow, is Jason going to stream the whole thing? Maybe Jason will. Maybe Jason won't. Maybe Jason just streams it and goes to the kitchen and makes breakfast for his very hungry girlfriend. It's probably going to punch him in the head for not making breakfast.
You're listening to Jason Miles Plays YouTube Clips.
Where's the lie? Where's the lie?
All right, here it comes. Episode 1 of the new Adam Curtis Can't Get You Out of My Head, Bloodshed on Wolf Mountain, which is also going to be the name of my next album.
It's a tough
because
name.
My band is literally named after an Adam Curtis documentary. Oh yeah, I'm playing it.
We are living through strange days. Across Britain, Europe, and America, societies have become split and polarized, not just in politics, but across the whole culture. There is anger at the inequality and the ever-growing corruption, and a widespread distrust of the elites. Yet at the same time, there is a paralysis. A sense that no one knows how to escape from this. Even in America, where there is now hope with the new president, there are also fears that despite the growing crisis, the system will just return to normal. This paralysis is also fueled by a technology driven by the aim of giving you today another version of what you had yesterday, and never a different tomorrow. These films are a history of how we got to this place, and why both those in power and we find it so difficult to move on. They will trace different forces across the world that have led to now, not just in the West, but in China and Russia as well. And they are told in a different way. They are an emotional history of what went on inside the heads of all kinds of people. Because in the age of the individual, what you felt and what you wanted and what you dreamed of were going to become the driving force across the world. And to understand the present, you have to go back and see what happened when those hopes and dreams and uncertainties inside people's minds met the much older forces of power. Often power that was decaying and desperate to keep its ascendancy. These strange days did not just happen. We, and those in power, created them together.
I forgot there's so much music in this shit. I'm hoping that we don't get fucking they don't take
yeah,
because that's how you get caught when all this music comes on. That's why I'm going to talk over it. So hopefully
Parody.
That's how we're gonna have to do the stream too, Marcus, because Adam Curtis, like I said, these are kind of like video essays, if you will.
Yeah.
So he has so many of these scenes where I don't know where he has access to fucking awesome archives footage.
Yeah,
and he
so
puts really interesting music over it. So
I feel like I've done this little shuffle that we're doing right now. It's just like through like one of the like U.S. Capitol buildings, like search through an Senate building or some shit.
Yeah, I don't know what this is from.
That was a sick robot that was on the screen earlier. That one with like the globe. It looked like something off of Fantastic Planet or whatever, right? Also, I think that dude with the dude dead on the windshield, I think might be the cover of that Ministry Live record. I might be wrong though.
Well, who does Adam Curtis work with musically? Was it Massive Attack?
In the late 1950s, as
He
the
fixed
British
it, I think,
Empire
right?
was falling apart,
Hey, thank you.
there was a growing sense that something was badly wrong under the surface. There was a feeling of unease, that despite all the reforms after the Second World War and the welfare state, the old forms of power had not gone away. And neither had the violence and the corruption that had always been a part of that power.
I guess it's Massive Attack and Aphex Twin.
The court
Okay, my bad.
opens with a traditional reading of names, and the wide experience available to the bank is apparent.
Mr. Cobbold, Mr. Miners, Sir Charles Hambro.
Senior Director, Merchant.
The bankers in the City of London had been at the very heart of the empire. In 1958, two of the most powerful of them, Lord Kindersley and William Keswick, were accused of using insider information to make millions for themselves.
Lord Kindersley,
Chairman of Rolls-Royce, merchant banker.
Mr. Keswick,
Hudson's Bay Company, a Far Eastern merchant.
The evidence against them was very strong. But when Keswick was shown the evidence, he dismissed it with a phrase that became notorious. It is difficult, he said, to remember conversations one has while shooting on a grouse moor. A government inquiry said the two men were obviously innocent. At the same time, reports had started to come back from one of the last parts of the empire, Kenya, that seemed to show that those in charge had gone out of control. They had been fighting a liberation movement called the Mau Mau. The reports said that hundreds of thousands of Kenyans had been put into special camps where they were going to be psychologically adjusted. The British were trying to manipulate what their chief psychologist called the African mind. But what then happened in the camps turned into a frenzied madness. The British used mass torture and killing as they desperately tried to hold on to power. The government in London denied all the accusations, but the rumours of violence and horror continued. And what had also not gone away was the fear and hatred inside the minds of many of the British of the others, the people the British had ruled over, who were now coming to what they had been told was the homeland.
Now listen carefully to this Indian's conversation with a white barber when he entered a saloon with a BBC radio microphone in his pocket.
No.
What's the matter?
No.
What did I just walk into?
Anything wrong?
Yes.
Boss, what is it?
I said no.
Would I like to know what is the matter? Well, it's another half an hour yet.
Well, I'm closed now.
But are you going to put the clothes on outside on the window, did you?
Well, you clear off.
Look, if you give me any reason why, what is the matter, then I shall go. If you tell me...
I'm closed.
You're not closed. You ain't closed yet.
Well, I am. To you.
Those who came from the Empire to Britain were shocked by the strange country they found. Michael de Freitas had come from Trinidad.
Okay, here comes this Michael X guy.
A strong and confident homeland at the center of the empire. Instead, what he found was what seemed to him a sad and frightened country.
You must remember that when we came to this country, we were not traveling to a foreign country. We were taught, I was taught when I was a young man, that my country, Trinidad, was an extension of this one. We were weaned on the concept of the empire. When I was a young boy, I stood in 90 degrees of sun, day after day, and sang all kind of silly things like God Save the Queen, Land of Hope and Glory, Britannia Rule the Waves, with the greatest of fervor, and believed every word of it. To come here and discover that not only wasn't I not traveling to the capital of the whole thing, which we were led to believe was so, but in actual fact we weren't wanted, has been a very shattering blow. Many people in this country who think that we are very hateful are so wrong.
You see, this is the great mystery. When you came here, you say you found you weren't wanted. Why then did you stay? Why did you choose to stay here?
This was the heartland.
Wouldn't you
of
just
the
go
whole
back
thing.
to Africa?
Yeah.
And one hoped, against hope, that what one saw was not right.
Somebody said, what a piece of shit question to ask.
Yeah, no joke, man. Like, serious.
It's not just he asked a question, he asked it with that such smugness.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, like, what the hell are you still doing here? Yeah. Like, obviously, you got the message. Why are you still here?
And only a way a British guy can do it, too.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's the guy, Michael X. That's the guy that changed his name to Michael X because he met Malcolm X, and people thought they were related. And I never talked to
UK racist as fuck. God damn. God damn. Yeah, you're angry like that other black guy. You two must be related.
I mean, that's why I started the show off with that clip of the riots in the UK in the late 50s, because that's when dude came over.
Yeah.
And there was another clip that showed kind of where he ended up living in. Oh, Sam's from the UK. Sam, do you know the story of this Michael X character?
Mao Zedong's wife was going mad. She was called Zhang Qing. She lived alone.
That's from my dude, Matt Armstrong.
Monkeys. And nurses, who she was convinced were conspiring against her.
That's Mao's wife.
Those in charge of the revolution in China had completely marginalized her. She was too dangerous, they thought, to be allowed anywhere near her husband or power. They had even sent her to Moscow to be locked in a sanatorium with real and imagined illnesses.
I actually think
But now, Zhang Qing's husband was facing disaster.
What'd you say?
I think I could rock one of those.
The revolution had led to horror.
A Mao hat? I have a Mao hat in the kitchen.
People had
it's
died
Mao-ish.
from starvation.
It's like if Mao was a hipster woman from
the other
2008.
leaders wanted to get rid of him. And suddenly, he called for her. Jiang Qing was an extraordinary person. She believed in nothing except the power of her will to shape reality.
God damn.
She had begun as an actor in films in Shanghai in the 1930s.
Right? Some
The other
strong
actors
shit
looked
to
down at
say.
her for her driving ambition.
She liked to be on the top, you see, always. She's a very ambitious woman, and she liked to be a top, and she plays with, all the directors, cameramans, make them, pay attention, you see, and interest in her, so she can have better part of the film. She married a quite famous writer called Tang Na.
I remember this story, yeah.
Do you know the story of
doesn't
Malcolm
feel
X?
satisfied about her husband, because her husband is not the very, very strong man, and she left him, and he jumped to the river, and then the water was very cold, so he jumped up again, you see. So.
You mean he tried to commit suicide?
Yes, he's trying to commit suicide.
After the suicide attempt, Jiang Qing wrote a long letter to her husband. It said she was leaving him, and also explained why with an extraordinary openness. There were powerful forces inside her, she said, that kept driving her towards fame and power. And it was only those forces that held her together psychologically. Nothing must hold them back. It ended, "What matters is that you remember me as a woman who never caves in before anyone, and who will never bear to be treated as inferior to men." Bitch. But Jiang Qing failed to become a
That's
star.
how she signed it.
The men who ran the studios scorned her ambition. Her most famous part was as a supporting actor in a film called Bloodshed on Wolf Mountain. The star of the film was called Li Lily.
Oh.
Jiang Qing was convinced that Li was trying to upstage her all the time. And she became the focus of all Jiang Qing's anger over her treatment by the Shanghai establishment. Bitter and disillusioned, Jiang Qing left Shanghai and travelled to join the communist resistance on a remote mountain in Yunnan.
Can you imagine an actress doing that nowadays?
Intense,
Like,
exciting place.
I'm fucking fed up with the Hollywood
the young
machine. I'm about to go be a fucking communist in the mountains, fighting the revolution.
Undisciplined guerrilla warfare.
That's what Gina Carano done.
When Jiang Qing started an affair with the leader,
She's hanging out the
Mao
Shapiro
Zedong,
compound instead.
she was scorned by the other revolutionaries as a social climbing upstart. Then it got worse. Mao announced that he was going to divorce his wife and marry Jiang Qing.
That's how
The
you
other
know
communist
she had
leaders were
that
horrified.
wop.
They
That
saw
mind
Jiang
power
Qing
that
as a
she was talking
dangerous,
about. She's like, I just
destructive
believe it
force.
and it happens.
Because she was
Believe in this
driven by
wop so
fierce
hard.
radical individualism that threatened their collective dream. In the communist structure, everyone was part of a unit. She insisted, I am a unit of one. No one could work out what to do. They even went and asked Stalin in Moscow for his advice. He said, let them marry. But Jiang Qing must sign a document promising to refrain from political activity for 30 years.
Jesus.
She signed, but she was furious with the men who now controlled her. They even tracked down and destroyed prints of her old films because they didn't fit with the image of Mao's wife.
Interesting.
Her fury grew. Jiang Qing wanted power on her own behalf, as an individual. And She wanted revenge. Now, 20 years later, in 1959, Mao was facing disaster, and he was calling for her.
Look at Conan playing in his front yard.
I was never into toy guns, man. I never was.
In America,
That kind of looks like
the
your dad's
idea of
corner too.
individualism
It kind of does.
central to the politics
That's real.
of the Cold War.
What are you, bulletproof? Get out from behind that tree.
Because it was what defined the United States against the collective ideology
My dad
of
had
Russia.
the bushiest 70s
At the heart
mustache,
of it
man.
was the picture of a strong, confident individual living an independent life in
Other than that, we
new
looked
giant
exactly the same
suburbs
as same age.
outside the old cities.
My gun won't shoot that far.
What's this shirt say? Oh, you can do it, Charlie Brown.
But there was a weakness, because the people in the suburbs were alone. And in their isolation, away from the old communities, they started to become fearful and lost. Out of these fears came a paranoia that was fueled by groups on the extreme right, like the John Birch Society.
And to the republic for which it stands.
This is really
One
scary.
nation, under God.
Bird shit.
They said that the American
And anytime you see a bunch of
government
white people
had been
look like
taken
that in a
over by
room, ain't
hidden
nothing good gonna
groups
happen.
controlled by the communists.
Agent. That's how you know you walked the wrong room.
And at the end
Hate
of the
to say it.
1950s, a
Hate to see
theory
it even
spread
more.
like wildfire through the suburbs that President Eisenhower himself had really been put into power by the communists.
Can you imagine that?
He is a dedicated, conscious agent of the Russians, the head of the John Birch Society said. That conclusion is based on detailed evidence so extensive that it is beyond any reasonable doubt. But this paranoia was not a new thing. An influential political scientist called Richard Hofstadter published an article that caused a sensation.
I agree.
He said that there had always been a dark paranoia built into America from the very start. The first settlers had come from Europe to America to flee from the corruption of power in the old world. But although they had got away from the old power, they hadn't got away from their suspicious minds. And alone, out in the vast wilderness,